space-time transaction. Exchanging food for the elf princess at the start. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 151. Compared to these islands with standard pirated acts, the heavy firepower is only RPG and single-person anti-aircraft missiles at most. Point. The soldiers of the Shiranayu Group Security Department wearing full sets of power armor or heavy exoskeletons rushed into the city at this time, which was simply a modern army beating primitive people. Suyui did not think about beheading. After several power armors flew out of the landing craft and went directly into the city to find the kidnapped hostages, the huge landing craft directly found a relatively flat area on the edge of the dilapidated city and hovered at low altitude. Except for the exoskeleton warriors who controlled the freighter, the remaining 180 warriors on the landing craft wore exoskeletons and jumped directly from 5 or 6 meters above the ground to the ground. After going down, they immediately dispersed and quickly controlled the entrances and exits of several cities according to the previously formulated battle plan. For such a small city, with the data of heavy exoskeletons, it would not take long to bypass it. This time, Suyui brought more than 200 people, including himself, 9 power armors, and 200 ground combatants equipped with heavy exoskeletons. All of them were selected by Shianshu and absorbed into the security department of Shiranayu Group in the past few days. They are basically retired elite soldiers. Their combat skills are first class. Therefore, there will soon be a spectacle of more than 100 soldiers surrounding the entire city. Of course, surrounding the city is not the goal. It is just the beginning. When the exoskeleton troops controlled the entrances and exits of the city, the power armor that entered the city first had already fought with the pirates inside. The first to bear the brunt was the most eye-catching villa in the entire city. This is also the most heavily guarded place in the city, and it is one of the few places where hostages can be confirmed. So 2 power armors were sent here. Although the pirates don't have powerful things, they still have several anti-aircraft machine guns. The speed of the power armor is not fast, leaving enough time for the opponent to react. Therefore, before getting close, the fierce gunfire has already sounded. However, facing the hail of bullets from large caliber anti-aircraft machine guns, the 2 power armors did not even have the intention to dodge and just rushed straight to the villa facing the barrage of bullets. Although the personnel operating the anti-aircraft machine guns were of limited quality and most of the shells were fired empty, they could still hit a few. However, it was useless. As soon as the shells approached the power armor, the energy shield on it would weaken some of its kinetic energy and it would not be able to penetrate the armor at all. Of course, even without the energy shield, this kind of anti-aircraft machine gun should not be able to penetrate the power armor. In the horrified eyes of the pirates, the 2 power armors landed leisurely on the roof of the villa. Wang Changlang is the captain of a shipping company under the Jiaohao Shipbuilding Group. At the age of nearly 60, he has more than 40 years of sailing experience and has been the captain of an ocean-going freighter for nearly 20 years. In the past 20 years, he has changed several ships, traveled countless miles, and visited countless countries, and never had any major accidents. This time, the ship received an order as soon as it arrived in the Hanghe Sea area, asking them to turn around and go to Penglai Island of Shiranayu Group. He was actually quite happy. Not only did the wealthy Shiranayu Group promise to give everyone on board a bonus double their salary, after arriving at the port. He had heard of the Shiranayu Group's reputation and was very curious about this Penglai Island. He could avoid unnecessary detours, earn more money, and visit the island. This trip couldn't be more exciting. Then, this excitement didn't last for half a day, and it couldn't last any longer because they encountered pirates as a giant ocean-going cargo ship of hundreds of thousands of tons. Pirates normally wouldn't rob such a big ship because big ships usually have guards, and they couldn't get on top of them because they were too tall. It was a tough nut to crack. However, this time, the pirates didn't know what was wrong, and they almost came out in full force. When Wang Changlang walked out of the cabin and saw hundreds of black pirates outside, each holding an axe in his hand, and some holding some rocket launchers and other items, His heart was already half cold point when he saw the leader of the island actually took out a large amount of high explosives and threatened them to sink the ship immediately if they didn't stop the ship and surrender. He knew that he would definitely not be able to escape this wave point. The ship was indeed tall enough. After the horsepower was fully increased, those poor pirates didn't have helicopters or anything, so it was just a dream. To want to come up point, there was no need to be afraid of ordinary guns or RPGs. Such a big ship, even if it was pierced in a few places and caused water leakage, it would not sink at all. It would not be a big problem to repair it afterwards, but the problem was that they didn't intend to board the ship by force. It was true that the ship was big enough to withstand some individual weapons, but it couldn't withstand the whole ship of TNT waiting below point. This was more than a few hundred kilograms. A rough scan showed that the explosives these pirates brought were definitely in tons, and the number before the ton might be in double digits. Wang Changlang didn't understand why a group of pirates had so much TNT, but it didn't prevent him from knowing that he must not resist at this time point with so many bombs sticking around the ship and exploding. Not to mention a cargo ship, even an aircraft carrier would be sunk point, so he and his ship naturally became prisoners of the pirates. These pirates are very strange. After they caught them, they didn't ask for money. They even searched the things on the ship briefly. Then they put a gun to his head and asked him to drive the ship back to the dilapidated port of Sugo Point. Wang Changlang thought that the next step would be for the company's senior management or the Jiazhou officials to send people to negotiate with these pirates and redeem him and others. He has been running on the sea for many years and he is very familiar with these pirates. These people usually want money but not life, and they will usually let people go after getting the money point. After all, the pirates of Suogo have listed companies. Doing business is about integrity. If you take money and kill people, who will pay for kidnapping in the future? And the facts prove that he is still too young. Point. The people here speak Gaulish. As a high quality talent, he happens to know a little bit. Point. Then he happened to hear the two little blacks joking privately about the conditions their boss offered to Shianayu Group, asking Shianayu Group to transfer $1 billion to their account every 3 hours. Otherwise they will kill people. Point. After receiving this information, Wang Changlang felt like the sky had fallen. Point. He immediately realized that this was not a pirate robbery at all, but involved something at a higher level. The pirates had no intention of releasing anyone. Point. Based on the previous tough stance of Shianayu Group and Jiazhou's working style, he believed that someone would come to rescue them, but before that, he needed to take the captured crew members to survive. Chapter 152. Wang Changlang guessed that these pirates were instructed by someone behind the scenes to make trouble for Jiazhou or Shianayu Group. Point. But pirates are greedy, and they must be greedy for money. Point. Therefore, when he met the pirate leader again to check the situation of the captives, he took the initiative to stand up and said that he came from a big family and his family was powerful and very rich. Point. There were hundreds of millions of dollars in his own account alone. As long as he and his crew were released, the money could be transferred to him immediately through international banks or digital currencies. The pirate leader was tempted. Point. But it was obviously impossible to release the people. He asked the other captives to be taken away and guarded separately, and he personally interrogated Wang Changlang, trying to force him to transfer money through torture. Point. Wang Changlang did have money, but he could take out tens of millions of Jiazhou coins, but hundreds of millions of dollars in deposits were nonsense. Point. But in this way, his goal was achieved. Point. The pirate leader was worried about letting his men torture him, so he went into battle himself. Point. The pirate leader had been staying with Wang Changlang, and the remaining pirates certainly did not dare to kill the captives at will. Point. After all, these were not ordinary captives, but key chess pieces involved in some international games. This also saved the crew. Point. But he himself suffered a lot. Point. At the age of 60, there was not a single piece of good skin on his body after being tortured. Point. But from beginning to end, he still gritted his teeth and insisted that he would pay when he saw the people released. Point. Of course, he could not admit that he was deceiving the other party. Otherwise it was hard to say whether these villains would kill a few people to vent their anger after knowing that they were deceived. Point. And just when Wang Changlang was almost blurred by the torture, the pirate leader suddenly ran out in a panic After receiving the information point faintly, he heard these pirates seem to shout something like the people from Shianayu group are coming. After hearing the sudden sound of gunfire and explosions outside, Wang Changlan was stunned for a while, and finally fainted with his head tilted. The last thought in his mind before he fainted was, if I had known it would come so soon, I would not have been a hero, and ran out to suffer. Bang. The power armor violently kicked open the door of a small room in the villa, and inside were 7 or 8 black guys huddled together. They all held axes in their hands, but faced with the power armor in front of them, they did not even have the courage to shoot. Just now, they saw with their own eyes that a power armor was firing wildly against the anti-aircraft machine gun on the roof, and slowly fell to the roof, and tore the people who fired the gun alive. Facing a monster that even anti-aircraft machine guns could not do anything about, the small broken axe in their hands could not bring them the slightest sense of security. Suyi glanced at the black guys in the room and didn't care. After a look around, his eyes fell on a tablet computer that was in a fairly new state. You don't need to look at this thing to know that this group of people snatched it from the crew. Of course, Suyi didn't mean to take the things back, but came here specifically because someone just applied for a confrontation. So he came here. Under the horrified gaze of a group of black people, he strode over and picked up the tablet, and Chai-Anshu instantly broke the password lock on it. After a simple search, he found the message record that had just jumped on the social platform to mock him. Not bad. I found it right. So he opened the electromagnetic rifle on the arm of the power armor and smashed all the useless axes in their hands. After confirming that these people should have no weapons, he opened the mask. Who used this computer to jump on my social account just now? Come out. I'm here. What do you say? With the 10,000 worlds language penetration card, he is proficient in the languages of countless worlds, and naturally he is fluent in the Gaulish language commonly used by these black people. They can communicate without any obstacles. Several black people looked at each other and then pointed at one of the young men who looked less than 20 years old without hesitation. The man who was pointed at turned pale. Without a trace of blood on his face, he said quickly, "Sir, it's not me or him. He asked us to shoot the video and send it out. He said those things in the video first, so you can't blame me." However, Suyi ignored his quibbling and walked straight to him, grabbed his shoulders, and lifted him up. Looking at his horrified look, Suyi sneered, "Don't you take a piss to see what you are? You are an uncivilized primitive man, and you dare to hit on my wife." The little black man was about to quibble, but the next moment, the 5 fingers of the power armor holding his shoulder gradually exerted force. The severe pain interrupted his words instantly, followed by the sound of bone breaking that made people's teeth ache. When Suyi threw the pirate with a crushed shoulder blade to the ground, the guy instantly twisted into a ball in pain like a maggot. Continuously making a ho-ho sound. The pain was so severe that he couldn't even wail. "Stop yelling." Suyi kicked him over, grabbed the dreadlocks on his head, and pulled them up again. Then he picked up the tablet, took a photo with him, and sent it out using the account on the tablet. "See, this is the end of being a keyboard warrior and talking nonsense online." The other black people in the room watched him do this, and they didn't dare to move at all, trembling. After doing this, Suyi threw this guy to the ground and stomped on his head. Looking at the few remaining black guys in the room, he turned on the electromagnetic rifle expressionlessly, and with the help of the auxiliary aiming module, he fired 6 shots in a blink of an eye. No one was left alive. The remaining 6 people were almost all shot through the center of their eyebrows by the mass gallbladder, without any deviation. With the help of the built-in war AI of the power armor, Suyi's shooting was just like turning on the automatic aiming in the game. There was no possibility of missing a shot at this distance. The keyboard warrior who typed and talked nonsense has been dealt with, and there is still one who talked nonsense on the video. Suyi walked out of the small room. He casually shot to death an islander who was passing by in a panic and wanted to escape, and then turned on the radio and asked, "Have you found the pirate leader?" The radio immediately responded, "Report to the chairman. Team 1 has not found it yet. Report to the chairman. Team 2 has not found it yet. Chairman, I'm the captain of Team 3. I found that the armed element in the city moved their positions very quickly. Some armed element who would deliberately let go will soon appear at the other end of the street. I suspect that there is a developed tunnel system in the city. The leaders of the island group and some of the hijacked crew members are very likely to be underground. Hearing these reports, Sui immediately said, "You all do your job, and keep an eye on the direction you are responsible for. I will immediately let the landing craft turn on the high power detector to scan the city structure. If the underground structure is scanned out, it will be synchronized to the map built into your armor immediately. At that time, each team will select 3 people to form a team to explore separately. Any armed personnel will be killed without mercy. If you meet the pirate leader, you can spare his life first. I want him to be useful, yes." Chapter 153. The fierce gunfire has never stopped since it started. Point in such a magical place. Even if the poor people don't even have food to eat, they may take out a few axes to shoot you. Point these people probably don't know why they are firing at outsiders now. They just know that everyone around them is shooting, so they follow suit. Point the exoskeleton warriors of Shianayu group who didn't notice the people who didn't shoot at all didn't bother to care. Once someone picked up a weapon and fired, they would be smashed in the head by a mass bullet shot from nowhere. Point more than 100 soldiers fought all the way from outside the city to inside the city, and the number of militants killed was almost countless. They combed the whole city inside and out like a comb. Point finally, when it was about to get dark, after nearly 2 hours of fierce fighting, the continuous gunfire finally quieted down. Point only occasionally could you hear a few sporadic gunshots after a long time. Point of course, there were only a few living people left in the city. Point not all of them were cleared by the security department of Shianayu group. Some people dropped their weapons and fled the city after they found something wrong. Point after all, less than 200 exoskeleton warriors are too few. It is impossible to really surround the whole city. At most, they can only guard a few traffic arteries to prevent cars from running away. Point they don't want anything and run barefoot in the wild. There is no need to chase them. Point there are about 30,000 to 40,000 people in the whole city. Point about 30,000 ran away. Point as for the rest of the people, according to the statistics of Shianshu connecting all exoskeleton systems, in just over 2 hours, these 200 people killed nearly 10,000 armed militants with guns. There is no kind heart. Point these people usually look like poor people who can't even afford to eat, but they are pirates who kill and rob when they pick up guns and get on the boat. Point in the past, people let them do whatever they want for various reasons such as humanitarianism and international order, but Suyike doesn't care about these. Point they robbed him of his things, kidnapped the crew he hired, threatened him, and even dared to speak foul language to Yuling. Point he wouldn't even blink an eye if all the people here were killed. Point and after all, these things are not even considered human beings to him, so they can be killed if they are killed. Chairman, our second team has found the fleeing island leader and the last 2 hostages he held in the underground passage and is chasing them. We will deliver him to you within 10 minutes. Well, thank you for your hard work. It's better to get things done as soon as possible so that you can go back. Suyi sat on the roof of the villa and looked at the scenery by the sea and said lightly, "After you go back this time, I will give each of you a bonus of 2 million and a month of paid leave. You can go back to China or take a vacation on Penglay Island, paid leave for 1 month. I'm awesome. That would be awesome. Chairman is awesome. These days I've been looking at the fish on our island, and I'm so greedy. I have to fish hard for a month during my vacation. Cheers." Suddenly came from the voice channel. Point, although fighting pirates violates many conventional rules, it is still just and in line with the simple values of the public. Point but even so, these soldiers will inevitably have some psychological shadows after such a battle. Point it is also right to give them a holiday. Sir, there is a reconnaissance plane approaching in the air. It took off from the Bald Eagle overseas base less than 100 kilometers away from Somalia. They should have observed the situation here through satellites while sending reconnaissance planes to collect intelligence. There are also 2 transport planes following behind. The transport planes are carrying some reporters from the Bald Eagle and Our Alliance Media. The latter should be a temporary organization of the Bald Eagle. They want to take pictures of what happened in this city and use the topic to put pressure on the fishing boats of the Shianayu group. Do you take countermeasures? Shoot it down, Suyi said expressionlessly. Only for reconnaissance aircraft, or shoot them all down. Also, use the group account to post an announcement saying that the Shianayu group is carrying out the mission of combating pirates and rescuing hostages in the nearby area. The sea and airspace has been blocked. Any aircraft of any country or organization is strictly prohibited from approaching. Otherwise, you will bear the consequences. Hack into the backend and change the time of the announcement to before their plane takes off. Even if there is a dispute afterwards, the bald eagle will find the black box of the plane and say it was shot down. That was the first announcement they made, and then the plane was sent over. You are asking for trouble. Who can you blame? And isn't this the pirates' territory? If your plane was shot down, why don't you go to the pirates and me? Okay, sir. Chianshu agreed immediately. The next moment, the landing craft that had been floating on the sea for 2 hours without any movement slowly turned, and the armor on the top was quickly opened, and a large electromagnetic gun stretched out from the top of the landing craft. After aiming at a certain direction in the sky, 3 mass bullets were fired in succession. At the same time, a laser cannon stretched out from the side and shot a thick laser at the sky above his head. Then he retracted the 2 turrets and returned to the previous silent state. Sir, a reconnaissance plane and 2 transport planes were all shot down. I also shot down the Bald Eagle military satellite that was observing here from high altitude. Well done. So, Yi was not worried at all whether this would cause a war. The barbarians fear power but not virtue. These white mad dogs bite those who are weaker than themselves. They seem to be tough and domineering, but in fact they are greedy for money and afraid of death. It is impossible to face an unknown enemy for a few planes and a few lives. If they fight, they fight. If they don't fight, they will make a fuss about what happened here. If they shoot down, they are more likely to pretend that nothing happened. After all, Shianayu group shot down the military aircraft of Bald Eagle and took down military satellites. If this news spreads, I'm afraid that the public will be in a frenzy. At that time, even if they dare not fight, they will have to bite the bullet and fight Shianayu group. This is what the Bald Eagle executives don't want to see at all. The reason why Suyi asked Shianshu to issue an announcement to modify the time is actually a small measure to prevent any eventuality. Chairman, the person has been captured, but during the capture process, a hostage was shot in the abdomen and is in critical condition. Apply for the use of the water of life. Use it. Bring the pirate leader to me. The bored Suyi finally got interested and jumped off the roof immediately. The heavy power armor smashed a big hole in the garden of the villa. But it doesn't matter. This damn place has been destroyed. As for the problem of how to deal with it afterwards, he already has a solution. In any case, this broken place can't be lived in. It's destroyed. Now, he wants to see if the pirate leader who filmed the video and shamelessly asked him to come in person has 3 heads and 6 arms, and whether his head is armored. Chapter 154. Soon, the man was brought to Suyi. Looking at the miserable pirate leader, he couldn't help but laugh. Didn't you call me in the video just now? I'm here. How about it? The boy seemed to be frightened and mentally a little abnormal. After seeing Suyi, his eyes were full of fear, and he answered the question in a neurotic way. Devil. You are devils. You killed everyone. Pa, don't be crazy here. I'm asking you a question. So, Yi slapped him directly and knocked out several of his teeth. Seeing that the guy had calmed down, he continued. Tell me, who asked you to rob this ship, and how much benefit did they give you? This time, the pirate leader did not dare to act crazy and stupid again, and hurriedly said, it was Bald Eagle's people. CIA. Yes, CIA. Their people in Sogo found me and asked me to rob this merchant ship and asked me to provoke Shianayu group, and here's how. I have evidence. They transferred $500 million to me, and the payment record is still there. And they also promised to give me Bald Eagle's nationality after the matter was completed, so that I could retire from the underworld. I was deceived by them. Otherwise I would not dare to provoke Shianayu group, and here's how. Even if I had 10 courage. As he spoke, he knocked his head to the ground. Suyi frowned and asked Shianshu immediately, is there such a large amount of funds in his account? If there was a transfer record in advance, it would make no sense for Shianshu to not find evidence of someone behind the scenes at the beginning. and could only rely on speculation. Point: the firewall of the banking system is no different from a toy in front of it. No, I checked all the personal and company accounts of him, his relatives and trusted subordinates, and I didn't find the 500 million yuan. I checked the flow of funds of the Bald Eagle's overseas intelligence department and found that the funds did exist. Last night, the Bald Eagle's financial department allocated the money to the intelligence department in the name of overseas operations funds, and then the money was divided into more than a dozen parts. After changing hands many times, it entered the personal accounts of more than a dozen high-level officials of the Bald Eagle's intelligence department. Even nearly 200 million dal was converted into Jiaohao coins and deposited in Jiaohao's banks. As for his bank transfer records, they were actually forged. Not only did his family and the Bald Eagle not get a penny, but they were also controlled. So, Yi looked at this guy and carefully sorted out what Xianshu had just said. Point: for a moment, I didn't know whether to complain about this idiot who worked for others without receiving money, or complain about the Bald Eagle's people who were really awesome. The 500 million dal operation funds were not given to this wronged person, and all were embezzled. Let's shoot him. This guy is a warlord in the country of Suo. Suyi originally thought he was something. Point: this is the result. Apart from sighing at the excellent matching mechanism of the Black State region, what else can he say when such a brainless guy can get to the top? After solving the problem of this group of pirates, all the people were rescued, except for the captain, who was tortured and suffered some skin injuries, and another unlucky guy who was shot when arresting the pirate leader. The others were fine. Point: the injured were treated with the water of life, which means that all the kidnapped crew members were rescued in this operation, and there were no casualties. Well, the casualties of the kidnappers are certainly not considered casualties. The uninjured crew members were sent back to the ship. In order to protect their injured hearts, Suyi also deliberately left 10 exoskeleton warriors to go back to Penglai Island with the ship. Point: as for the remaining warriors, he only took half of them, leaving 100 exoskeleton warriors and 3 power armors here. Point: they are responsible for the subsequent aftermath. Point: in order not to increase the tension in the world and affect the company's business, what happened here still needs to be explained. Although it is true that tens of thousands of pirates were killed in the crackdown on pirates, it is still a bit far-fetched. Point: so Suyi decided to find someone to take the blame. Point: who else is more suitable to take the blame than the local warlords in the country of So? These people are engaged in genocide in their own civil war, killing hundreds of thousands of people at any time. A few tens of thousands of people are nothing to them, and it doesn't hurt to take the blame. Point: compared with the outrageous news that the security department of Xianyu Group killed tens of thousands of pirates in one battle. Point: no matter how you look at it, after Xianyu Group destroyed the pirate den, the local warlords took the opportunity to send troops to seize the territory, causing tens of thousands of casualties. Which is more acceptable to the world? Point: if the former is spread, others will think that Xianyu Group is too cruel. Point: if the latter is spread, the spectators who don't know the truth will probably only think, oh, only tens of thousands of people died this time, which is much less than the hundreds of thousands before, and there is progress. This is the difference. Point: as for whether the local warlords are willing to come out and take the blame, it is not up to them. Point: it doesn't matter if you are willing to take the blame, but if you don't want to take it, there is no such thing as unwillingness. This is the question of taking the blame about this completely destroyed little broken city. Point: later, Suyi didn't plan to just leave this place alone. Point: the main reason is that the geographical location here is really good, almost guarding the most critical position of the Golden Waterway. Point: whether it is to avoid being disgusted by similar problems in the future, or to disgust the Bald Eagle, this place is of great use to him. Point: as for the legal issue, it couldn't be simpler. Suoguo was originally an anarchic place. Just find a warlord to recognize them as the legal official and sign an agreement. Point: as for whether the League of Nations recognizes it or not, Suyi doesn't bother to care. Point: the land is already in his hands. You can recognize it or not. Point: the locals have no objection. Who are you? Why do you have the right to make decisions? When the Bald Eagle was doing evil, the League of Nations didn't say anything. How can he be considered to have complete procedures? Why can't he do it? Compared with the anti-bandit operation here, which is almost without any suspense. The internet is much more lively now. As soon as Suyi took the photo with Zhao and posted it, the netizens who had been following this matter went crazy. Compared with those more serious news topics such as politics and technology. Obviously, this kind of plot is more popular among netizens. The chairman of Shianayu Group is a real liar. Offline. And this liar is also a notorious pirate. This is a big news on the front page, wherever it is posted. That photo and the screenshot of Zhao Hen's face jumping and mocking Wonder Suyi's dynamic were made into a bound book and spread all over the world. Although most of them were memes, there are indeed many internet idiots who have restrained themselves since then. Who wouldn't be afraid of being killed for just a few words of nonsense. In addition, Xianshu deliberately pushed the flow for the purpose of diverting attention, making this matter quickly popular on the internet around the world in a very short time. As for what happened to these pirates, not many people paid attention to it. In the discussion of that small group of people, most of them also thought that these pirates deserved it, and there was no need to sympathize with them at all. Chapter 155. When the incident on Blue Star happened, the magic world was also not peaceful. In the castle of Mengchuan City, Wei frowned as she listened to the battle report from her subordinates. Since the elf army arrived at the city yesterday, it took them only half a day to complete the integration of the chaotic coalition outside, and then they began to attack the city. For a day and a night, the siege never stopped. The geographical location of Mengchuan City is very special. It is located at the intersection of two rivers, surrounded by water on two sides and a mountain on one side. Only the side facing the north is a relatively flat open area, which can allow the coalition outside to attack comprehensively. Although the other three directions were also surrounded. In fact, because there were not many available places, it was difficult for the coalition to launch a siege on those sides. Even the siege was very weak. Before Wei could contact the outside world at any time in Mengchuan City, relying on the relatively lax defense here. Some small batches of goods and even a few people can still enter the city through river shipping. But it is difficult for bulk goods like food and consumables like weapons to come in, which is why Mengchuan City lacks everything except food and weapons. Although the coalition forces besieging on the other three sides are small, they are not dead. Relatively speaking, the defenders on the three walls are also relatively small. After all, there are only tens of thousands of people, and it is impossible to spread them on the four walls. The main defense position of the Mengchuan City defenders is only the northern wall. Deep trenches and high fortifications, coupled with invincible geographical advantages, are the reasons why Mengchuan City has been able to defend for several years with fewer enemies. But that was before. The coalition forces from different races outside the city have their own ulterior motives. Facing the towering walls and iron barrel-like defenses, they dare not attack the city with all their strength. Even if they have the advantage in numbers, they are afraid that the strength of their own race will be damaged during the siege, and they may not have a say in the subsequent distribution of benefits or other aspects, and they will work for others for nothing. But now it is different. With the absolutely powerful external force of the elf kingdom joining in, and the leading elf princess named Enki is obviously amazing. Whether it was killing a chicken to scare the monkey or coercion and inducement, at least she has now turned the originally chaotic coalition into an iron plate. Since yesterday's attack, the pressure faced by the defenders of Mengchuan City has far exceeded that of several years before. Waves of coalition forces of various ethnic groups rushed towards the towering city walls like a tide, pressing the defenders on the city to be a little breathless. But the opponent did not just fight hard. Sometimes they fainted, suddenly began to retreat halfway through the fight, and sometimes they really fought. At the same time, while fighting, a large number of coalition soldiers who were not involved in the project would move a large number of sandbags and throw them into the moat. The moat of Mengchuan City connects the two large rivers on both sides. It is wide and deep, blocking countless enemy troops attacking the city. However, after only one day, after countless sandbags were thrown, a dirt road made of sandbags had been forcibly built on the moat. After all, the water in the moat was diverted, not a real river, and the flow rate of the water was too slow. The defenders on the city wall were too tired to deal with the enemies who attacked the city in real and fake ways, and had no time to protect the moat. It was Only natural that the road was cut off and filled. Without the protection of the river, the scale of the coalition siege would only be larger and more intense. The problem of insufficient number of defenders in Mengchuan City was finally exposed at this time. Facing the coalition's continuous attacks in batches, the two shifts of defenders on the city wall obviously couldn't keep up with the energy. Even if these soldiers were at least warriors, they couldn't withstand such continuous attacks. The coalition had a large number of soldiers who could take turns to rest, but the defenders of Mengchuan City couldn't. After a day and a night of fighting, the soldiers in the city were visibly tired. For this reason, we had to take out some of the water of life, dilute it and distribute it to the whole army to drink to solve the problem of soldiers' fatigue. But this is tantamount to drinking poison to quench thirst, and at most it can only last for a while. Under the coalition's reckless rotation attack, even an Iron Man can be worn down, and the water of life is not omnipotent. Just hold on at the current pace. I don't need you to die meaninglessly with the whole city. It only takes 3 days. Hold on for 3 days and our reinforcement will arrive. In this case, nothing can boost morale more than reinforcement on the way. Facing a group of tired subordinates, we had to paint a rosy picture. Of course, this is not a rosy picture, because there is really a coalition. She routinely gave her subordinates a boost of chicken blood, and she was originally going to go up to the city wall to inspect the city defense. But at this time, a magician in a magician's robe hurried into the city lord's mansion with a scroll. Your Highness Princess, Your Highness. News from the Imperial capital. We dismissed the others calmly and then asked the magician to hand over the scroll. What is it, Your Majesty? Passed away. The magician immediately knelt down and trembled. His hand froze as she spread out the scroll. A complex expression flashed across her eyes, and then she smiled bitterly. This is really not the right time. When she opened the scroll, she saw that it was sent by her elder brother, the current eldest prince. The general meaning of the first part was, alas, I have lost my father. The second half got to the point. On the grounds of His Majesty's death, the princes and princesses scattered around were asked to return to the imperial capital to pay tribute to the late emperor and participate in his coronation ceremony. He will inherit the throne as the eldest son of the royal family in 10 days and hopes to receive the blessings of his brothers and sisters. Of course, these are just polite words. The last few sentences are the key points. Now, the situation is turbulent and there are many villains plotting for the throne. When you come to the imperial capital, you can bring your personal guards with you. I already know about the siege of Mengchuan City. You can put it aside for now. When the new dynasty is in power, I will choose a more prosperous fiefdom for you. The words mean that we will lead the troops to Beijing to help him secure the throne. As for this broken Mengchuan City, what important town on the northern border, it will be lost. If it is lost. In the eyes of these princes, it is just a group of barbarians from outside the Great Wall who come to collect money. Afterwards, they will leave by themselves, and they can take back the territory calmly, which is not a big deal at all. Moreover, Mengchuan City is located on the border, where there are constant wars, and it is very barren. As long as we can help him secure the throne, he can change we to a more prosperous fiefdom. Can We's apparent power really decide the battle between the princes and the imperial capital? That is obviously impossible. As the worst of them have at least 1 million soldiers, the coalition forces outside besieging Mengchuan City will be defeated in a day when facing the elite army of the Qiang Empire controlled by these princes. Not to mention the people under her control can't influence the situation in the imperial capital at all. What is really useful and makes the princes who want to take the throne take the initiative to extend an olive branch to invite her is her identity. A royal princess, and a princess with a prominent reputation and a reputation as a genius since childhood. Once she joins a camp and clearly supports one of the princes to take the throne, the political impact will be much greater than the military impact. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 156. After reading this sincere invitation letter, we put it away at any time, looking at the magician kneeling on the ground and said, "Anything else?" "No, nothing." Wee's expression was calm. She stood up, drew her sword, and chopped off his head with one sword point. The eldest prince would extend an olive branch to her at this time, to pull her into the group, and other princes would naturally not have thought of it. And as the eldest son, the eldest prince himself has a lot of buffs, but in the fight for the throne, he is on par with his younger brothers, and even vaguely the one who is at a disadvantage among the parties. It is enough to explain a lot of things. This guy's methods are much worse than those of the other princes. Even he can think of winning over other royal children who are not participating in the fight for the throne, and the other princes can't have thought of it. But now Wee has only received the news from the eldest prince. There is no need to think about it. Most of the people in the city lord's mansion control the magic circle for external communication, and the information of the other princes is mostly intercepted by others. The magician in front of him was in charge of contacting the magic circle, so it was not unfair to kill him. Wee immediately called people over, and in addition to dealing with the corpse, she also searched thoroughly. As expected, many letters intercepted by the eldest princes. People were found soon. Most of them were recently sent by other princes to win over Wee. The earliest one had even been sent for nearly half a month, but it was all intercepted by the insider sent by the eldest prince to her, always using such unpresentable means. No wonder the first heir to the throne has become like this now. Wee couldn't help but think of a sentence mentioned in The Art of War that Sui gave her: in any battle, the right way to unite, and the unusual way to win, obviously, has the greatest advantage, but does not take the right way, always wants to do things through such unconventional means. She doubted the level of her royal brother in her heart. This buddy has basically no chance of the throne. Apart from being the eldest son, he is not good at anything, so why should he compete with the others? And the other intercepted letters came. The other princes would say more if they were to extend an olive branch. Of course, they would not even mention such a heaven-defying statement as asking her to lead troops to Beijing directly. In the letter, they just said that the most beloved princess of the late emperor was her, Wee, who was now seriously ill and dying. Once they heard the news of the late emperor's death, they must rush back to the imperial capital to see him off for the last time. As for asking her to give up Mengchuan city and then give her a new fiefdom afterwards, they would not say such a heaven-defying statement. In any case, the emperor's duty is to protect everyone in the empire. You said you would give up this and that before you ascended the throne. And you wrote it in the letter. If we publish the letter, it would damage your reputation too much. Mengchuan city was besieged by foreign tribes. You can ignore it and pretend to be blind, but you want people to abandon the city and flee, which is a bit too heaven-defying. Other princes would not do such things that would give people a reason to criticize them. Only the eldest prince was a bit stupid and wrote it in the letter and sent it to her, but not writing it clearly does not mean not hinting. Each prince gave Wee many hints and promised a lot of benefits. Wee took a rough look at the letters sent by these princes and found that, no matter what they said, they basically meant the same thing. That is, she was asked to lead the troops back to the imperial capital with great fanfare. The number of troops was not important, and the most important thing was to show which side she stood on. There was nothing new, so she was too lazy to read it carefully. Instead, she picked up the latest news sent by her own people in the imperial capital. Then she pinched her eyebrows with a headache. Don't think that the letter just sent by the eldest prince was easy. The actual situation is much more complicated than this. The old emperor passed away last night. Since last night, the entire imperial capital has been completely under martial law. The capital garrison knights and the palace guards, who only obeyed the emperor on the surface, directly blocked the entire city. Of course, in fact, everyone knows that it is the eldest prince who controls these two armies. Other ambitious princes are certainly unwilling to sit and wait for death. Early this morning, the first batch of hundreds of thousands of troops under the second prince arrived outside the imperial capital, and in the name of condolences, they asked the eldest prince to open the city gate to let the second prince enter the city. More troops are still on the way. Millions of elite troops of the Qiang Empire under the command of the four princes have long been assembled around the imperial capital, and now they have all started to move. The war is about to break out. Even in the imperial capital. The eldest prince, as the first heir, cannot fully control the imperial capital. In this giant city famous in the magic world, the shouting and killing has not stopped since last night, and no one knows how many people have died inside. We were as intelligence personnel in the imperial capital are not sure either, only saying that the river outside the palace turned red this morning. The situation in the imperial capital seems tense, but it is not easy at all. On the surface, the princes have not yet completely fought, but secretly the war has actually begun. The civil war will break out completely if there is only one opportunity. And we felt that this opportunity might not be far away, just in the next few days. Leave the corpse alone and attack with armor. We shook her head and turned her eyes away from the distant imperial capital. Instead of caring about that, she might as well take care of her own Mengchuan city first. And the news of the turmoil in the imperial capital and the death of the emperor must not spread in Mengchuan city in the next few days, otherwise it will definitely cause the army to waver. After all, she had been making promises that reinforcements were on the way, and the defenders in the city had no idea that there were reinforcements from another world, so they naturally thought that they were from the imperial capital. Now they were told that the imperial capital was about to go into civil war, and several princes were almost fighting to get the throne. Doesn't this mean that there was no possibility of reinforcement at all? We had just ordered her confidants to block the news and cut off all external contact channels in the city, including the magic circle of the magic guild. It just so happened that she received the news from Suyi on the trading platform. Wei, who was originally in a gloomy mood due to the pressure of city defense and the turmoil in the imperial capital, suddenly brightened up, and the whole person was visibly brighter. She immediately explained the matter to her subordinates quickly, and then entered the trading space. How is it? Do you have any clues? Can it be solved within 3 days? Mengchuan City can only hold on for about 3 days at most. As soon as she entered the door, we asked quickly. Although 2 days had passed since the 3-day period agreed upon with Suyi, she felt that this time was too short, and she was afraid that Suyi would not have enough time to prepare. 3 days. Not 3 days. The first batch of supplies has been prepared, and the troops are all in place, and they can be sent to you now. Chapter 157. Hearing Suyi's words, we didn't have any hope at first, thinking that Suyi just came to tell her that she couldn't make it at the previously agreed time. We was stunned for a moment, and then felt that her whole body was wrapped in happiness. The conscience of heaven and earth. These 2 days have been full of bad news. Now finally comes some good news. Is it really so fast? There is an army of tens of thousands of people, and all kinds of technical personnel are needed. Are you ready? We still couldn't believe it. Because she has had more contact with Suyi, and has been exposed to Suyi's modern equipment. She has a certain understanding of the composition of Blue Star's army. The number of technical arms such as artillery and engineering corps should not be that large in the serious army. It's difficult to find so many in a short period of time, let alone prepare a large amount of matching equipment. Which is even harder. Not only were all the people found and gathered, but in order to prevent Yao from telling the truth, Jinazhao didn't even look for people in the active army, but found experienced veterans. The conditions offered by the Kyushu military and Shianayu group are enough to make anyone tempted, which naturally includes people who need to run for their lives after retirement. Although this thing is dangerous, there are obviously many people who are willing to do it. But after all, retired soldiers are scattered all over the country. After finding them, you still need to explain the danger and importance of the matter to them, and give them time to think about it. It was precisely because of this that Jiao's spent nearly 2 days looking for someone. As for the mobilization of equipment, it is not a problem. There is a large amount of this equipment in the combat readiness warehouses in several war zones. Suyi can just pick it up himself. The most difficult thing is to find a group of people with rich experience, suitable identities, and brave and capable people. If people were directly drawn from the active troops, it would not take so long at all. The army could set off the next day after Suyi and Jiahao reached a consensus after briefly telling Wei Wei the reason for spending 2 days. Suyi looked at her shocked face and said nothing, but he still couldn't help but want to laugh in his heart. Do you understand what the mobilization ability of modern society is? So, now I can take your soldiers and troops back to Mengchuan City directly? Wei Wei was still a little unbelievable. No, you have to give me the primary group life transaction permission card first, Suyi said with a smile. Wei Wei quickly used her membership points to buy the group life transaction permission card and gave it to Suyi. After Suyi used it, he directly transferred countless various armaments in his dedicated trading space to Wei Wei and then transferred the 9999 soldiers who were already on standby in the trading space through the trading platform. Gave it to her. Then he brought out Lin Yiling, an old acquaintance who looked shocked and confused. This guy was originally an active duty military officer, but he had retired before coming here in order to take this career. Of course, Lin Yiling's level didn't know anything about the other world. He only knew that he was going to lead a force composed of medium and long range firepower such as artillery and engineers to carry out a very dangerous mission. Not only are these soldiers all elite veterans temporarily recalled under the premise of limited resources, but based on these equipment, Xianyu Group has also equipped each of them with a Sentinel-3 heavy exoskeleton. There is no way to even buy this thing in Kaishu. But now he can command the large army that has been formed. It is impossible not to be excited. As for the mission reward, not to mention the retired soldiers who were running for a living, even he drooled when he saw it. There must be a brave man under a heavy reward. This has been true since ancient times, and now is certainly no exception. The above is all the information Lin Yiling knows. Then, after a group of them gathered at a military base in a deep mountain, they saw Suyi arriving in a landing craft. Then, he came to this place. Brother Su, what's going on? Looking at the trading space in the form of an ancient hall and the endless starry sky outside the hall. Lin Yiling felt that his brain was a little insufficient. Don't pry if you shouldn't ask. Suyi was naturally too lazy to answer his question and immediately pointed at Wei Wei and said, the place where you are required to perform your mission is a different world with supernatural abilities. Your mission is to help Princess Wei Wei from the Blazing Sun Empire in another world to defend her fiefdom, Mengchuan City. I don't care what method you use, human beings, no one cares about being inhumane. As long as we successfully defend the city, it will be a great achievement. During this period, you all need to follow Princess Wei Wei's command. Of course, when it comes to professional issues, she will not intervene and give blind orders. Hearing this, Wei Wei also said, leave professional matters to professional people. Don't worry, I won't point fingers in this regard. Once you get there, this army will be under your full command. It is independent of the existing military system of Mengchuan City. You can directly participating in the high-level meetings of Mengchuan City. My status in Mengchuan City is second only to mine, and I don't need to look at anyone's face. In the magic world, blood is respected. An army like the Blue Star Army without any family bloodline reputation and no foundation has no need to integrate into the local army in Mengchuan City. We plan to make them their own system, independent of Mengchuan City's original military system. All it takes is Lin Yiling, the leader, to participate in formulating tactical strategies. She doesn't care about the rest, and no one else in Mengchuan City can take care of it. She won't allow anyone to get close to the garrison. Prepared for the Blue Star Army. Use the simplest and crudest way to avoid all possible conflicts. In fact, there is no way to do this. The three views of the people in the two worlds are too different. The middle and upper level officers in Mengchuan City are basically knights of various noble origins, and the Blue Star people have no habit of distinguishing nobles and humbles by blood. If the two sides really want to communicate in depth, conflicts are almost inevitable. Don't drive away the foreign enemies before you start fighting internally. Lin Yiling didn't know what was going on over there, and he was a little surprised when he heard it. He secretly thought that the people in this other world were quite good and actually gave him such a high permission for an outsider. This is equivalent to letting an outsider lead a large army alone in the city, and the degree of trust can be seen. Of course, he had this idea because he didn't understand the rules of the trading platform at all. He didn't know that the agreement between Suyi and Wee determined that they, the reinforcement, would not go to the other world to rebel against the members of the trading platform. Compared with her original subordinates who were unpredictable in their loyalty and treachery, Wee would naturally trust this army with the constraints of the trading platform more, and it didn't matter how much permission was given. Chapter 158. After a brief exchange and some precautions, both parties completed the handover. The scale of this transaction is not small, and the content of the transaction is outrageous. There are countless types of military equipment. There are 3,000 sets of modular 155mm unmanned turret artillery systems alone. Without considering the transfer of positions, each set only requires one gunner to operate. 3,000 doors with 155mm rear running in unison. That scene is rarely seen on Blue Star, let alone another world. Suyi couldn't even imagine how much psychological shadow this thing's first salvo would bring to the people outside Mengchuan City. In addition to these 3,000 automatic artillery pieces, there are also 1,000 rocket launchers, each of which can fire 30 or 40 rocket launchers in a very short time. This is a real firepower. These are the big ones, and the rest, such as construction vehicles and the like, are not worth mentioning at all. In addition, a massive reserve of artillery shells was also sent there. There are more than 9 million rounds of 155mm artillery shells alone, and there are also countless rocket launchers of various types plus matching gun barrels and launchers for replacement, as well as some engineering vehicles used for logistics and earthwork operations. If these equipments were placed on Blue Star, they would be enough to fight a war of annihilation. There are few countries that can withstand this kind of firepower. When the quantity of weapons and equipment reaches this level, it is no longer something that can be measured by money. On Blue Star, this is enough to be used as a political bargaining chip. Compared with the things Suyi gave, the chips we used to complete this transaction seemed much simpler and more crude. 10 barrels of water of life. Or to be more specific, it's called the essence of life. Essentially, the original version of the elves' water of life is spring water flowing from the spring of life. After some magical means combined with natural evolution, it will turn into a milder life liquid with less medicinal efficacy than the original spring water. These life liquids eventually flowed into a lake, and the elves became famous throughout the world for their life liquid, which was also called the holy water of the elves. Even in the magical world, this is something that the elves will never sell to outsiders. They diluted the original liquid of life, named it water of life, and sold it as a holiday specialty for the elves. The water of life at this time is quite effective, and is useful to many high-level magicians or warriors. The water of life that we gave him before was not even as good as this. It had been diluted several times. After Suyi got these diluted versions, he diluted them tens of thousands of times. This stuff is still effective in curing diseases and saving lives. In Blue Star now we gave 10 large barrels, each of which exceeded 1 cubic meter by visual inspection. And it's not even water of life anymore, it's all liquid of life. The strong vitality can be felt by any living thing. Across the wooden barrel, Suyi just smelled it from a distance and felt his spirit trembled. We used this as a bargaining chip in this transaction, and the value was completely equal. After Suyi took it back, he only needed to dilute it in a bucket, which would probably be enough for everyone in Gears. How to get rid of the pain. It is no exaggeration to say that his merits are immeasurable. And all of this was achieved by these 10,000 soldiers and the Kaishu officials, whether their purpose is for generous rewards or for other considerations. They have undoubtedly brought great benefits to everyone in Kaishu. The trading points awarded for a transaction level are also determined based on the content of the traded items. This is an unprecedented transaction and is obviously recognized by the platform. This was the first time that Suyi encountered a situation where the points obtained from a single transaction exceeded 3 digits, and it didn't just barely exceed 3 digits. For this transaction, the platform gave him more than 300 points as a reward. The same goes for Wee. She originally became poor after buying the primary group life trading card, but she didn't expect that she made a huge profit after the transaction. Suyi speculated that this might be a mechanism used by the trading platform to encourage both parties to trade. However, time was urgent at the moment. After we got this powerful foreign aid, she was in a hurry to go back and rearrange the city defense and had no time to discuss this issue with him in detail. I can only talk about it next time. Returning to Blue Star with 10 large barrels of life essence, Suyi called Yuling and Xinghan over and eagerly opened the boxes after confirming that ordinary people could drink it without any negative effects. He drank a glass without hesitation. The original liquid of life that has not been diluted so many times is indeed much stronger than the water of life. He usually drinks the water of life as water, and that thing has no effect on him. But after drinking this life liquid, he still felt refreshed, and his whole body seemed to feel much better. But this refreshing feeling and this taste, Suyi always felt very familiar. It seemed that not only was it not the first time he tasted it, but he drank it often. Yuling saw that his expression was wrong and thought it was something weird. She also picked up a glass and took a sip, then nodded and said, "That's right, it's the original liquid of life. You don't think it tastes good?" As an elf princess, she used this stuff as water when she was a child. Many of the elven nobles thought that the original liquid of life was too rich and unpalatable. She thought Suyi was also in the same situation, so she advised, "Drink more and you will get used to it. The original liquid of life has a much better effect on the human body than the water of life. Drink more of this, and whether you want to practice magic or martial arts in the future, you will be able to get twice the result with half the effort. It's not that it doesn't taste good, I just feel that the taste is a bit strange. It feels too familiar to me, as if." Suyi looked at Yuling, then looked again at Xinghan, who was taciturn next to him, drinking water and reading a book. "Stop talking. Is it weird?" "No, isn't this the normal taste? It's sweet and slightly fragrant, with a strong breath of life." Yuling picked up the cup and smelled it, a little confused. "How should I say?" Suyi looked at her red mouth, thinking that there were no outsiders here, so he simply said, "Don't you think this stuff tastes like your saliva?" Damn. When he first drank it, he just thought it tasted delicious, but it was strangely familiar. But had he ever traded this thing with Wee before? He thought for a long time, and couldn't figure out why it seemed like this happened so often. The familiarity of drinking until Yuling spoke and looked at her rosy mouth. Suyi suddenly remembered he would feel this way every time when he was making out with Yuling. No matter how tired he was, as long as he kissed her little mouth twice, he would immediately feel refreshed, as if he was resurrected with full blood. Kissing obviously won't have such magical effects, but there will inevitably be an exchange of body fluids during the kissing process. Puff. Xinghan, who was reading quietly at first, never expected that the two of them would start driving the car immediately after talking to each other. After spitting out a mouthful of water, he stood up in a panic. "Sorry, I suddenly remembered something else. You guys want to talk?" Chapter 159. "What are you talking about?" Seeing Xinghan leave, Yuling blushed and slapped Suyi in anger. "I'm not talking nonsense. It really tastes exactly the same as yours." Suyi hugged her and tried it again and said with certainty, "Yes, it tastes exactly the same. Even the mysterious breath of life is the same. If there is a difference, it is that you give me a feeling that is clearer than this original liquid of life." Seeing that he didn't seem to be joking, Yuling didn't know what she remembered for a moment and was a little dazed. Seeing this, Suyi said again, "Didn't you say before that the high priest of your tribe sealed the core of the fountain of life of the elf kingdom into your body before he died? Could it be that reason? If there is really a problem with the seal, then I'm afraid the core of the fountain of life will never be taken out." Yuling frowned and said in distress, "It shouldn't be. Why don't I feel anything at all?" As she said, she got up and found a flower pot in the office, which was planted with an ornamental plant from another world, which was very beautiful after blooming. But it is still in the state of just sprouting. Yuling stretched out her finger, and a drop of blood slowly condensed between her fingers. At the moment when this drop of blood dripped, the huge vitality seemed to be materialized at this moment. Suyi could clearly feel a majestic energy sweeping across the entire room, and then saw the magic plant growing wildly at a speed visible to the naked eye, growing from a seedling to a flower in a moment. It was very simple for Yuling to use magic to achieve this effect, but this time she did not use magic. This was just a drop of her blood. Judging from the effect, it might be better than the original liquid of life. The facts were in front of her, and she couldn't help but believe it. The core of the fountain of life that sealed her body, the thing called vitality, had a problem with the seal and had completely merged with her. In other words, she was the fountain of life in human form. She herself had never realized this, and Suyi was the only one who had close contact with her. Suyi had only seen the water of life diluted countless times, so naturally he didn't know what the original version of the fountain of life tasted like. Until today, after drinking the original liquid of life that was closest to the original water of the fountain of life, the familiar feeling made him discover this blind spot. So, am I not a traitor? I spent so much money to buy a lot of water of life. Suyi hugged Yuling and joked. Yuling didn't know what she was thinking. Her face flushed and she whispered, "The water of life I bought has other users, and the water on me can't." This topic is a bit outrageous, but it is actually a serious question. Yuling suddenly became a Tang monk-like existence. She completely integrated the core of the fountain of life. Now anything that falls from her body is a good thing that can prolong life. But just as she said, no matter how much the water of life in the other world is diluted, no matter how thin the internal vitality is, it flows out of the real fountain of life. There is definitely no problem with trading or using it for other purposes, but she can't be serious in this situation. Let alone herself. Suyi was the first to disagree. Just kidding. This is her wife. The fountain of life has merged into your body. This situation should be just a manifestation. Do you think it is possible that you can completely control the power of the core of the source of life, and then you can control this power without such an awkward form? Then, you can use magic to turn a glass of water into the most concentrated fountain of life. So, Yi guessed. Of course, he didn't understand these things at all. To put it bluntly, he found inspiration from the fantasy novels he had read before. Yuling actually nodded after a moment of hesitation. What you said seems to be right. If I can try to master this power and actively control it with magic, then my own strength and other aspects can be greatly improved. Just like you said, from a small lake to a large glass of water, I only need one magic to turn everything into water of life. This is not impossible, but the fountain of life was just a dead thing before, passively placed there to let it flow on its own. Those gods probably didn't think of letting people master the core of the fountain of life and use this power for themselves when they designed it. Therefore, I guess it's not that easy to fully master it. It takes a long time to try. At least I have to figure out how this thing called vitality is integrated with me. The most critical issue now is still here. How was the core of the fountain of life sealed into her body in the first place? How did the seal fail now? How did this thing integrate with her? Yuling was completely in the dark and had no idea at all. I don't know where this vitality comes from, let alone actively controlling it for my own use. Don't worry, we have plenty of time. Suyi comforted, and then remembered something and laughed. I saw someone say on the internet that sticking to a beautiful woman can prolong life, but I didn't believe it, so this is true. Come on, give me another taste. Xinghan hasn't gone far yet when Suyi suddenly made a major discovery. Wei finally brought reinforcement to Mengchuan City. Suyi had sold some artillery and firearms to her before. Although not much, she knew the principles of these weapons and how to use them. Before the transaction, Suyi told her what types of weapons he would send her this time. So Wei had already prepared the positions of those automatic turrets and rocket launchers in Mengchuan City. And the camps and warehouses were also ready. Here we have to mention the value of the developed agricultural productivity based on magic in the other world to feed a large population. As a border fortress, Mengchuan City often breaks out in wars. This is a typical military city. In ancient Kyushu, this kind of place, except for caravans and the army, usually not many people would live here. The same is true in the magic world. Ordinary people don't like war, and this principle is applicable in any world point. However, because of the huge population base point even in such a border fortress city with wars, the permanent population exceeds several million point. This population size naturally gave birth to an extremely large city point. In addition, on the eve of the siege of the city by the coalition forces, the people in Mengchuan City found that this time was not like the previous small fights, and most of them ran away. Now there are less than 1 million people left in the city point. As a result, Mengchuan City is now very empty point. Whether it is an artillery position or a temporary military camp and warehouse, it is easy to find a place. Chapter 160. There was no time for Lin Yilong to adapt to the wonderful feeling of traveling through the world point. As soon as he arrived in Mengchuan City, he went to integrate the army and informed all the instructors in the team. He briefly explained the situation in the magic world and the purpose and significance of this operation point. Then, without even having time to arrange tactics, he asked professional drone operators to release more than a dozen military mapping drones at the same time. A field command post was deployed point less than an hour after arriving in the magic world. With this military camp as the center, the topography of the 10-kilometer radius around Mengchuan City was quickly mapped by drones, and then modeled into a 3D sand table through AI algorithms. Wei Wei and several officers from Mengchuan City watched their operations throughout the process, and at first they didn't know what the meaning was. After seeing the 3D sand table floating in the air and the mountains and rivers on the sand table that they were so familiar with, they were immediately shocked. How did you do this? This is temporary mapping using drones, and then the mapping information is used in the temporary field command post, and then the command post's intelligent AI is used to build the model. In fact, it is very rough. If there is a satellite, we can make a more precise 3D sand table. A female officer immediately answered. In addition to the sand table of the command post, the mapping data will also be converted into a special military map and sent to all automatic artillery and rocket launchers. With these map data, we will give them the location after determining the target so that they can directly launch artillery fire at the first time. In this way, we can achieve beyond visual range firepower delivery. Otherwise, it is difficult to accurately strike targets beyond the line of sight with only radio communication in the dark. Wait a minute. We were still a little confused. Beyond visual range firepower delivery? If I understand correctly, it means directly firing without seeing the enemy, right? Then how to fire without seeing the enemy? This group of professionals from Blue Star really gave her a bit of a problem point. This is not right. The artillery Suyi gave her did not say that it can be used like this. Shouldn't it be on the city wall or behind the city wall to find an open space, and then when the enemy attacks the city, directly fire at the road that must be passed, and that's it. It didn't say that it can also accurately strike invisible enemies. This is even more outrageous than magic. On Blue Star, we have more means, artillery radar, satellites and the like, to find the enemy out of sight and then directly strike. There are too many ways. In this world, there are fewer methods. At present, our plan is to release drones, observe the enemy at high altitude, and then our command post will sort out the information given by the drones, pass the information to the firepower delivery position, and carry out long-range firepower strikes. Drones. What if the drones are shot down as soon as they get close? We frowned. Point she knew about drones. They were among the items she traded with Suyi before point, but the drones Suyi gave her were all small things the size of a palm, and their functions were limited. If you want to use this thing to scout the enemy, you have to fly very close to take a clear picture point, but once you are close, you can see others clearly, and others can certainly see you clearly point. Although the coalition forces don't know what this thing flying in the sky is, it doesn't prevent them from shooting it down after discovering it. The drone was shot down. The female officer who was sent to contact Wu Wei was stunned for a moment and said solemnly, "Is the magic in your world so powerful? Can it even shoot down a reconnaissance plane at an altitude of 10,000 meters? If that's the case, then I'm afraid we have to think of other ways to provide the strike coordinates for the artillery positioning." Wait. We hurriedly stopped. 10,000 meters high. Can you get effective information by flying so high? The Drones that Sui gave me before can hardly see anything at a distance of 1,000 meters. Oh, then he should give you a civilian product, which is different from a military drone. The female officer hurriedly replied, so if our unmanned reconnaissance aircraft can detect at an altitude of 10,000 meters, it will not be shot down at an altitude of 10,000 meters. Unless there happens to be a magician observing the sky, it will never be discovered. We said firmly, that's fine. It doesn't matter if we are discovered and shot down occasionally. We brought a lot of equipment this time. They can't always keep an eye on us. The female officer also breathed a sigh of relief. In this world without satellite support, if the means of drone reconnaissance are ineffective, then there will be a big problem. At that time, we can only send scouts to conduct physical reconnaissance with handheld equipment, and there may be a lot of casualties. Of course, not conducting reconnaissance does not affect the firing, but the efficiency is to low point. While she was relieved, we took a breath of cold air before. She only knew that, although these weapons on Blue Star had limited threats to high-level magicians and warriors, they were good at clearing miscellaneous soldiers because of their large quantity. But now, after seeing this means of attacking beyond visual range, let's put it in her mind. She was walking on the road with her army. There was no sign. The sky full of shells and rockets fell on her head like rain. This is even more terrifying than a horror story. Especially the reconnaissance plane, which observes information on the ground at an altitude of 10,000 meters. This method is a bit too outrageous for the magical world. Every move you make is seen by the opponent. How can you fight this war? At this moment, the magic world finally felt the dimensionality reduction attack from modern technology. That is, they know magic and have some countermeasures. If it were a world without magic, facing this kind of war mode, they would have to surrender without even seeing the enemy. Even a 9th level magician cannot cast magic on a target out of sight. After the coalition forces outside the city were bombed, the only way was probably to let high level warriors and magicians rush into the city together and find a way to deal with this group of artillery. And this countermeasure is actually not very useful. Because the defenders in Mengchuan City are not eating dry food. In terms of military size, Wei is naturally not as good as the coalition forces outside the city. But in terms of the number of masters, her city lord's mansion is not lacking at all. After all, she is the princess of the empire, and she is surrounded by many strong men and the imperial guards to protect her, as well as her own servants at the same time. As an ambitious princess, it is difficult for Wei to recruit troops on a large scale before the situation becomes chaotic. But it is not difficult to recruit a large number of powerful magicians and warriors to serve under her. So there are actually quite a few high-level magicians and warriors in Mengchuan City. If the opponent wants to break in with only these high-level forces, it is obviously overthinking. Chapter 161. After touring the reinforcement camp, Wei immediately adjusted the plan for defending the city. The garrison on the city wall can be appropriately reduced. Then half of the magicians and warriors above level 7 were selected to form a temporary guard team, stationed around the reinforcement camp and artillery positions. This is to ensure the safety of these output positions after the people on the city wall were withdrawn. Although the defense force was a little weaker, the firepower was much stronger than before. Ideally, a round of salvos from these thousands of 155mm howitzers and 1,000 rocket launchers would be enough to turn most of the areas outside the city gate into a dead-end point. Even if half of the garrison on the city wall was withdrawn, there was no need to worry about the city gate being breached. Because there was a high probability that these coalition forces would not be able to touch the city gate at all. The war outside the city was still going on, and the city was fully cooperating with this army from another world to dig fortifications and build positions, and the commanders and senior officers in the reinforcement were discussing how to fight this battle. After getting Weiwei's assurance that they only need to bomb and don't need to worry about their own safety. These officers are eager to fight. It doesn't matter if the supporting technology is not enough. This comprehensive field temporary command is enough to process information and command. This is an extremely pure artillery unit. Without worrying about logistics and supply, and without worrying about the position being threatened by enemy anti-artillery radars, ground missiles, fighter jets, etc. What kind of strength can an army with thousands of cannons and thousands of rocket launchers exert? Even they themselves dare not think about. This really proves the saying that I have never fought such a rich war in my life. There is nothing to say. After preparations are complete, just fire the cannons and bomb his mother. The siege outside the city has never stopped. After an afternoon of intensive preparations and a night of rest, after communicating with the senior officers of Mengchuan City, the reinforcement command learned that the coalition forces attacking the city would change 4 batches every day, and they would immediately change people to continue the attack at a certain time. The first shift change after getting up early was around 8 o'clock in the morning. Therefore, the command ordered all soldiers to rest early, get up before 6 o'clock, and then return to their respective positions last night. At that time, the coalition forces attacking the city outside the city would start bombing as soon as they changed shifts in the early morning, give the other side a little firepower shock, directly disrupt the opponents siege rhythm. We naturally knew that the reinforcement were preparing to fire, but she had no opinion on this. Professional matters should be listened to by professionals. The original words of the female officer sent by Lin Yilong to her were, directly bombing the army attacking the city will certainly cause the other side's engineers to poke, and this kind of firepower delivery will also cause great psychological shadows to the other side. But now the attackers have reached the bottom of the city wall. In order to protect the city wall, and because of the blind spot of firepower, it is difficult to bomb the people under the city wall. If someone on the other side is more observant, he will immediately find this flaw. Instead of exposing the weakness to others, it is better to let them attack for the time being, and wait until the shift change when there is no one in the blind spot under the city wall, and then we will bomb. This will not only give the other side a greater shock, but also conceal our own shortcomings. In fact, this small defect is not a shortcoming at all. If it is exposed to the other side, the quality of the coalition forces cannot be used. But the enemy's attack has advantages and disadvantages in the blind spot, and the enemy's attack is pervasive and there is no place to hide. These are 2 completely different concepts. The latter will definitely lead to the collapse of the morale of the coalition forces many times. The weakness may not be really weak, but the biggest problem of exposing the weakness is that it will give the other side hope. The war in the magic world was still at the stage where both sides were clearly fighting each other. We took a copy of Sun Tzu's Art of War and learned some small tricks. Before she had time to operate, she was already considered a person with quite tactical thinking in this world. And now these reinforcement from Blue Star, she can't understand the fancy operations in her mind at all, and can only call it awesome. Just like the firing incident, her original intention was to blow up the position as soon as it was ready. But the reinforcement command had even set the time for firing. And when she heard this, it seemed to be true. It was simply too detailed. What is professionalism? This is what professionalism is all about. Now she couldn't wait to see what expression the elf named Enki would have after the firing point. Just when we estimated that the time was almost up, and was thinking about whether to find a place on the city wall to sit in the front row and watch the explosion, the latest news came from the front line. Your Highness, the coalition forces have changed shifts, but they did not continue to attack. Their commander called out and wanted to talk to you. Commander? The elf named Enki. Yes, okay. We got up and walked out without thinking. I was still thinking about this a second ago, but I didn't expect it to come so soon. Isn't that a coincidence? Thinking of the little bitch who had mocked her at the foot of the city a few days ago, she couldn't help but want to mock back, and her pace quickened. But halfway through the walkie-talkie, she remembered something, turned around, picked up the intercom, and said to it, "Are you ready? We are fully prepared here and can fire at any time." Came the words of the female officer in the command post. Is it too late to fire after hearing my order? Or do you have a fixed time to fire and you have to control it yourself? We asked. That's not the case. When to fire can be based on your orders, but it's best not to let the enemy get too close to the city wall. Of course, after receiving the affirmative answer, we suddenly felt very good. Key, I have met Her Royal Highness the Princess, under the city. The elf princess named Enki was as gentle, dignified and graceful as ever. Even the light armor she wore not only did not affect her beauty, but actually added a bit of heroism and beauty to her. "What's the matter?" we asked expressionlessly. "It's been 3 days. Isn't the princess ready to surrender yet?" Anki said warmly, "I can assure you that if Kei Cheng surrenders, the coalition forces will not harm anyone after entering the city. We just want to fight for a territory that is enough for us to survive. After these few days of fighting, it should be clear to you that you cannot defend this city." She looked calm, and it seemed that taking over Mengchuan City was a matter of course for her. "Ah, you so confident?" we said with a half smile, but not a smile, "since you are so kind and have given me a promise that QIU will not commit any crime after the city is destroyed, then I will also give you a promise. After your coalition forces are defeated, I will not do anything to you. Instead, I will send you to a great place." Chapter 162. Anki didn't know where Wei got her confidence from. After the battles over the past few days, the defenders on the city were visibly exhausted. They probably used up all their strength to defend the city, not to mention the counterattack. She even thought about how to arrange things after defeating the coalition forces. For a moment, she wondered if the princess of the Chiang Empire was so angry that she fainted. Or were there reinforcement? Ki looked back at an old elf with white hair behind her. The elf shook his head, indicating that there was no such thing. There was no sign of any human army support around Mengchuan City, and several city gates had not been opened. There was no magic circle in the city that could teleport a large number of troops in. That was fine. And Ki looked at Wei with a smile on her face. She guessed that Wei was deliberately trying to scare her, making her suspicious, so that the defenders could have some time to rest. Then he shook his head and said, "Your Highness, you should know what price the coalition army paid for its invasion. It is too naive to scare us off with just a few words. I have told you before that a major change has occurred in the north, and we have to go south. There is no point in resisting, except to let more people die. Give up." However, others do not know the inside story, but Wei knows it clearly, and immediately retorted, "What major change? Isn't it the rebellion of the Dark Elves? This is a man-made disaster, not a natural disaster. The fountain of life of the elves was destroyed in the internal strife, causing the imbalance of the environment in the north. And soon it will make the vast number of elves and various ethnic groups unable to survive. This is a reason why the coalition, which was previously a loose end and only wanted to make money, suddenly became a solid block and wanted to take Mengchuan City at all costs. If outsiders did not know, they would really think that a natural disaster had occurred in the north." After hearing Anki's words, the Moon Elves and several other royal families have become so corrupt, and our family is not at fault. Anki said lightly, "I don't want to argue with you about who is right and who is wrong. I just want to tell you," Wei said in a deep voice, "you are responsible for the mess you made by your own internal fighting, and the Blazing Sun Empire has no obligation to clean up your mess. The north is no longer suitable for you to survive. Whether you die in the cold wind or die in famine, that is your business. This is not a place you can come to." "You said I can't withstand the storm in the north. Now I'll tell you, I am the storm." "Fire." When Wei said the word fire, although Anki didn't know what would happen, the sense of crisis that surged into her heart at that moment, making her feel breathless, immediately made her realize that something extremely dangerous was approaching. She glanced at the elven priest next to her and saw that the old elf was also in a panic, and realized that she was not the only one feeling this way. She immediately wanted to notify the army behind her that had assembled to prepare for the siege to retreat. This time, the army was larger than any of the previous rotating siege troops, and they were all elite. In addition to the goblin and warfragtag troops, there were also a large number of elite elf warriors. After 3 days of siege, she thought the time had come, and she could take Mengchuan City in one go, so she assembled such an elite siege army. This was also the reason why she called Wei out again before the war, to try to make the other side surrender. But now the assembled elite army has become a living target. She wanted to order the army to retreat, but it was too late. Accompanied by the whistling of the air, a rocket with a tail flame accurately hit the center of the crowd. In an instant, dozens of elite elf warriors who were closely lined up were blown away, and those who were closer to the center of the explosion were directly blown to pieces, leaving no bones, and those who were not directly blown away, even if they were more than 10 meters away, were directly injured and vomited blood. A rocket shell, without any defense, directly harvested the lives of dozens of elf warriors and injured nearly 100 people. You have to know that these elf warriors are not ordinary people. At least they are the strength of first level warriors, and this is just the beginning. It was as if Pandora's box was opened. As the first rocket shell landed, more shells fell from the sky like raindrops. The tail flame of the rocket shell covered the sky and the sun. In the smoke and dust, there were countless 155mm howitzers. What is this? Key looked at this scene with a pale face, but his reaction was not slow. He immediately turned his head to look at the elf priest next to him. The priest also understood. Although he didn't know what these were, it shouldn't be wrong to treat them as magic arrows. The old elf waved the staff in his hand and muttered something. The next moment, the staff slammed down on the ground, and a translucent sky suddenly appeared above the heads of all the elf troops, trying to stop the rain of shells. Seeing this, we were on the wall couldn't help but reveal a mocking smile. As expected, facing the endless shells and rockets, the sky lasted less than a second before it shattered. The old elf priest also spit out a mouthful of blood and fell to the ground. The magic and martial arts of this world cannot ignore the difference in numbers before they become gods. As long as there are enough people, the demigod can kill you. This is also the reason why there are still organizations like countries in a world with extraordinary power. The old priest of the elves is an 8th level magician. When facing such dense firepower, no one can stop him if he wants to run. But it is a foolish dream to take all these shells. Did your drone see the leaders in front? Can you concentrate firepower to kill them? We picked up the walkie-talkie and asked tentatively. The female officer in charge of contacting her in the command post immediately replied, "The leaders are our key targets. There are more than 50 155mm howitzers aimed at them, and 5 rocket launchers are also aimed at them. They are firing at this time. The shells fired include high explosive bombs, white phosphorus incendiary bombs, fuel air bombs, etc. As long as there is no accident, the leader of the coalition forces will be killed here." Originally, the command post just wanted to blow up the opposite side at dawn, but unexpectedly, the leader of the coalition forces ran out. Although it was not sure whether this kind of powerful person from another world with powerful extraordinary power could be killed by the explosion, the command center still deployed some firepower to try. Upon hearing this, we immediately dropped the intercom and pulled out a gorgeous longbow from the storage space. Twisting the waist and pulling the string, the bow opened to the full moon. A silver energy arrow condensed on the bow, pointing directly at Anki, who found that something was wrong and helped the elf priest to leave the battlefield. Want to escape? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 163. It all seemed like a long time, but in fact, it took less than a minute from the first shell hitting the coalition army outside the city. We aimed at Anki, who was about to evacuate, and directly released the bowstring. The bow was like thunder, and the string was like thunder. A 7th level warrior who practiced both magic and martial arts, plus this magic longbow made by a demigod. This arrow may not have the AoE effect of a rocket, but in terms of single target lethality, it is much stronger than these rockets and shells. Even an adult dragon has to temporarily avoid the edge. Not to mention Anki. Anki, who was about to retreat after helping the priest, felt like a thorn in her back the moment he shot the arrow. The 7th level warrior's foresight of danger saved her life again. At the moment he shot the arrow, Anki abandoned the monster mount under him and dodged to the side. Cry. The shriek of the air being torn apart was like the cry of a phoenix, and the monster mount hit by this arrow froze in place. The next moment, it exploded into a blood mist, and not even a complete bone could be found. Anki was shocked and at this time he could not care about his gentle and dignified image. He rolled again before he could stand firm and dodged another arrow. Wee on the wall was not in a hurry. Although the longbow made by the demigod in her hand was powerful, she was only at the 7th level after all, and the Anki on the opposite side was also at the 7th level point. If she wanted to kill the opponent with this bow without other means, it would be a bit short. Her shooting was just to delay time and not giving Ki a chance to escape. The large scale AoE was still behind, and Ki obviously guessed Wu's plan. But under the suppression of this longbow, she could only dodge continuously and was restricted to the spot and had no time to escape. Otherwise, if she was shot with an arrow, she would be seriously injured if she didn't die. Sure enough, when Wee shot the 4th arrow, dozens of rockets accompanied by the whistling of the air hit Anki directly. Wee's arrow just happened to interrupt Anki's action of taking out magic props because she was notified in advance and knew that this was a big guy. After shooting the last arrow, Wee didn't think twice and directly hit the city wall with a defensive magic. Several other high-level magicians on the city wall also cast the same magic. The next moment, the first 2 big guys landed. Out of respect for the powerful people in the magic world, the command post used the 750mm rocket with the largest caliber that the 191 rocket launcher could launch to attack such high-level strongmen, and the warhead carried was a fuel air bomb weighing more than 500 kilograms. Because people had been arranged on the city wall to use laser guidance, the error of these 2 rockets was extremely small. Almost all of them hit less than 1 meter away from Anki. Boom. Even though there were several defensive barriers set up by high-level magicians, the entire city wall was shaking continuously after the explosion, making some soldiers even unable to stand steadily. 2 mushroom clouds slowly rose from the explosion site. 10 meters behind Anki, the elite elves and goblins who had not yet evacuated were torn to pieces in an instant. These people started as warriors or magicians above the 4th level, but they could not even withstand the aftermath of such weapons. Wee looked at the 2 huge mushroom clouds and swallowed her saliva. This may be a bit painful, however, this was just the beginning. The flames of the explosion had not yet dissipated, and then there were rockets and shells raining down on the position where Anki had just been. It was a minute later when the last shell landed. There was gunpowder smoke in front of the city wall, and in the smoke, you could vaguely see that there was no flat place on the devastated land. This was just in front of the city wall. The troops farther away, facing the firepower of these 3,000 howitzers and 1,000 rocket launchers, had become a purgatory on Earth. The ground was full of corpses torn apart by high explosive bombs and fuel air bombs. The rain of fire from the white phosphorus bombs that exploded at high altitudes covered the entire battlefield. The coalition soldiers who were lucky enough not to be killed by the shells had to watch out for the rain of fire when they fled. Once they were touched, the burning white phosphorus would burn everything it touched like a maggot attached to the bone. Even if they jumped into the water, they could not put out the fire. The bombing range was not limited to the army that Anki had gathered at the city gate to prepare to take down Mengchuan city in one go, but also included the endless coalition camp outside the city. At this moment, the burning of the camp was no longer a story that the people of Kyushu had seen since childhood, but a realistic one. The morning sun was obscured by the smoke, and the entire battlefield presented a doomsday scene. It was not just Wee who was stunned. There were also the defenders on the city wall. Some people had previously been puzzled by the princess's attention to those weak outsiders, and even a little indignant. But after seeing this scene, all the previous imbalances were balanced. What? Level 7 and 8. Compared with the strangely dressed people in the city, their fighting power is just for fun. I'm afraid that the forbidden spell released by the god of magic can only have this effect. An 8th level magician couldn't help but sigh. Anyway, he certainly couldn't do it. Even if his magic power was drained, he could only release an attack with a coverage range of several hundred meters. It was just a little more powerful than the 2 rocket launchers loaded with fuel air bombs just now. With the help of this group of people, Mengchuan city can be defended. Another 7th level warrior sat on the battlement tiredly and said, just defend Mengchuan city? The 8th level magician suddenly showed an inexplicable smile and turned his head to look behind point, or the south point. The warrior understood immediately and didn't know what he remembered, and his heartbeat accelerated. Point, they have been with Wee Wee for a long time. If this thing can be done, they will definitely get a loyal minister in the future. Point, don't look at them as either 7th level or 8th level. To put it bluntly, they are just stronger in personal strength. Point, compared with those real imperial dignitaries, they are too far behind. Point, even demigods like Xinghan are still discriminated against because of their bloodline in this world, let alone them. Point, the top bloodlines, such as Wee Wee, the descendants of the royal family of the Qiang Empire, and several royal families of the elves, are basically descendants of the ancient gods of law and martial arts. Others can't pretend to be. Point, but there are explanations for the inferior ones. As long as you stay in the circle of the rich and powerful for long enough, no matter what your origin is, you can find a chance to find your ancestors and attach yourself to a noble bloodline. Point, after a long time, even if it is fake, it can become true. Point, this is also the reason why this group of people turned to Wee Wee. Point, before, they did not think that Wee Wee could compete for the throne. They just wanted to follow Wee Wee to mix into the circle of the rich and powerful in this northern border, and completely separate the identity of the local minor noble bloodline from the previous civilian origin. Point, now it seems that there is hope for bigger pursuits. Chapter 164. The terrifying firepower coverage lasted for nearly half an hour. The reinforcement had 3,000 artillery pieces and 1,000 rocket launchers, which fired more than 600,000 rounds of various types of shells in half an hour, and fired more than 20,000 tons of ammunition. Point, the amount of ammunition Van Fleet had was just for fun. With the blessing of modern technology, the barrels are more durable, the ammunition is loaded and replaced more quickly, and the accessories can be replaced and maintained modularly after damage. Point, the firepower delivery capability is far beyond that of decades ago. Point, the scale of firepower delivered by these 3,000 artillery pieces and 1,000 rocket launchers in this half hour is unprecedented even in Blue Star. After all, Blue Star has never fought a truly high intensity war since entering the new era. These weapons usually look ordinary and seem to have nothing outstanding. Point, it's just because the scale of application is far from enough. Point, artillery is a weapon that can only reflect its value when used on a large scale, and it also brings the greatest shock to people. Point, at the moment, the defenders of Mengchuan City are obviously the most shocked group of people. Point, after the overwhelming bombing, the smoke and dust outside the city took more than half an hour to dissipate. Point, the battlefield in front of us was already devastated, and there was no intact ground to be seen. Point, there were shell holes and various corpses everywhere, including elves, orcs, and more of them were dwarves and goblins, the main races in the coalition. Point, corpses were everywhere, but it was difficult to find a few intact corpses in them. Point, the moat that had been filled with sandbags by the coalition had been completely buried and disappeared under the dense artillery fire that did not distinguish between enemies and friends. It was as if there had never been a moat here. Point, this was just the place near the city gate. Point, a little further away, the coalition camp could be seen on the city wall, and the flames had not even been extinguished. At this time, Point, under the rising black smoke was a ruin where no trace of living people could be seen. Point, the defenders who witnessed this doomsday scene in the whole city were all pale at this moment. With shells flying all over the sky and bombing everywhere, they couldn't believe what they would do if they were standing under the city wall now, facing such a large-scale bombing. Point, the range of the bombing was too large. In addition to the 155mm howitzer, there were also a large number of powerful rockets of various types. From time to time, there would be a few fuel air bombs, thermobaric bombs, and white-collar incendiary bombs mixed in. Point, for ordinary shells, warriors and magicians above level 4 could still find a way to resist and save themselves, but when facing the various rockets that emerged one after another, they had no way to do anything. Point, it can be said that it is impossible to defend against it. Point, in this environment, only warriors and magicians above level 7 can survive on the battlefield. Point, the actual situation is indeed the case Unless they are deliberately interfered by Weiwei and some high-level beings in Mengchuan City, the high-level warriors and magicians in the coalition have basically escaped smoothly. But once they are entangled by teammates of equal strength and cannot escape for a while, even high-level warriors will die here. The 8th level priest of the elves and the princess and the commander of the coalition forces and Key are among them. The former died on the spot. We thought that the latter was also dead, but she didn't expect that when a bunch of cavalry were sent out of the city to clean up the battlefield, she was accidentally picked up by Anki. This guy actually had a breath left. Of course, it doesn't mean that she, a 7th level warrior, can withstand 2 fuel air bombs and dozens of artillery shells. But as the princess of the elves and the most beloved daughter of the new elf king, she has many life-saving treasures. She barely survived in this hell-like environment. But she only had a breath left. When she was picked up, there was no good meat on her body. For a prisoner of this level, we certainly wouldn't let her die like this. After sealing her with magic, she used the water of life to save her. It will be very useful, whether it is used as a bargaining chip in negotiations with the elf kingdom, or for other purposes. The spoils obtained by cleaning up the battlefield after the war are far more than just the prisoner and key point. After cleaning up the front battlefield outside the city, the cavalry of Mengchuan City advanced a few kilometers, cautiously probing as they advanced, and entered the camp of the coalition forces. Before entering, they found that the fire ignited by the incendiary bombs in the camp had not been extinguished, but it was terribly quiet inside. At first, they thought there would be an ambush and were quite cautious, but after entering the camp, they found that the camp was empty. Most of the camps had been burned down, and the rear camps that were not affected by the war were also empty at this time. The cavalry of Mengchuan City searched the camp for a long time and found only a few hundred living people. These people were either injured and unable to run, or were completely scared and didn't even have the courage to run. From these people, they finally understood that the bombing had not stopped yet, and the soldiers in the coalition camp who were not fighting had begun to flee in large numbers. No matter how the middle and high level warriors and magicians tried to stop them, they could not stop them. Even after the artillery fire from Mengchuan City directly hit the coalition camp, the middle and high level warriors and magicians also began to flee. The defeat was vividly demonstrated at this moment. Because the coalition camp is further north, there is a mountainous area with rugged mountain roads, and several of the necessary roads are narrow valleys. So after the large-scale rout, the coalition forces suffered a very serious stampede on the way to escape. Everyone only regretted that their parents had not given them 2 more legs, fearing that the terrifying shells behind them would hit them. Abandoning the road is completely abandoning armor and weapons without regard for the consequences. As for the abandoned logistical baggage in the camp, it is countless. According to statistics after the war, among the various types of supplies that were not burned, there were more than 300,000 sets of ordinary weapons and armor, and more than 100,000 sets of low and medium level armor and weapons engraved with magic inscriptions, more than 100,000 tons of ordinary food supplies, and more than 20,000 tons of various magic ingredients, more than 5,000 barrels of life water used as marching medicine. Each barrel is about 1 cubic meter, and this kind of life water is the concentration that we originally traded to Suyi. As for the casualties, it is even more outrageous. Following Anki, the most elite troops of the coalition forces, totaling 200,000, gathered under the city to prepare to take Mengchuan City in one fell swoop. When counting afterwards, it was roughly estimated that more than 160,000 coalition soldiers died in the front battlefield, and the total number of those who escaped from the battlefield after the artillery fire was no more than 40,000. The situation in the rear camp was even worse than the front battlefield that was bombed. The front army at least had some armor and other protection, but the soldiers in the camp had no defense at all, and there were nearly 1 million coalition soldiers stationed in the camp. Chapter 165. After the cavalry of Mengchuan City entered the camp, the statistics showed that the casualties of the coalition forces in the camp were even more horrible than those on the front battlefield, and the death toll should have exceeded 200,000. That is, this round of bombing caused at least nearly 360,000 coalition soldiers to be killed and injured. In the cold weapon war, those who did not collapse with more than 10% casualties were already the elite among the elite. The coalition forces had a total of more than 1 million troops, and this time the casualties exceeded 30%. So collapse was a matter of course. When the troops of Mengchuan City thought that this was the result of this wave of bombing, it turned out that they still underestimated the tragic situation when the super large-scale cluster of troops collapsed. A cavalry squad of Mengchuan City was ordered to follow the route of the coalition's collapse to inquire about the situation. As a result, they saw layers of corpses without any gaps along the way. Some were wounded who escaped after being injured and burned by the explosion, and most of the corpses were broken bones and tendons. It was obviously because they fled too hastily and were directly trampled to death by friendly forces on the road. Especially at the passes of several canyons, the density of corpses was so dense that it was unbearable to look at. Blood was flowing all over the ground. When the people of Mengchuan City arrived here, they could still see many people who were still alive and wailing in the sea of corpses and blood. After a simple calculation, more than 100,000 people of the coalition forces died in the trampling due to the internal strife on the way to escape. Therefore, the total gains of the reinforcement in this battle should be more than 400,000. This number is shocking. As the commander of the reinforcement, Lin Yilang also took a breath of cold air after hearing such horrific casualties. Even their command had not expected such a result before the war. There was no way. They also had no experience in this kind of battle. After reviewing the situation afterwards, many commanders believed that there were many reasons for such heavy casualties. One was that the simultaneous firing of artillery and rocket launchers of this scale was probably unique even on Blue Star. The density of firepower was too terrifying, and the opponent had nowhere to hide. Another reason is that people in the other world lack countermeasures against weapons such as artillery and have no defense at all. Whether it is the army formation when preparing to attack the city or the camp of the coalition forces, it is quite dense, and there are often scenes where dozens of people are killed by a shell, which is almost impossible to happen on the battlefield of Blue Star. Even the army with an excellent matching mechanism like the Black State Uncle Henry can't be stupid enough to let so many people stand together to be bombed, and here is still in the cold weapon war period, and dense formations are very common. There is another important reason. People in this world have almost no understanding of artillery weapons. Although we has tried a few artillery before. But that thing is a very backward product that Suyi got, and the number is too small. The coalition forces thought it was some kind of magic when they were bombed, and they didn't take it seriously at all. The lack of understanding of artillery has led to a significant increase in the lethality of this weapon. On Blue Star, everyone knows to lie down when bombed. Although this method is stupid, it can really increase the probability of survival. And people in this world have no such concept at all. When bombed, they just run around. They had no idea that the artillery attack range was dozens of kilometers, so running was useless. A combination of so many factors led to the current results. Lin Yilang went to the city wall to see the situation outside. In order to protect the mental health of the soldiers, he even dared to only tell the soldiers in the reinforcement that this battle was a great victory. As for how many enemies were wiped out and what the actual situation on the battlefield was like, he simply kept silent. And he also asked the command center to use drones to observe the frontline battlefield and not to talk about it. This scene of corpses and blood is still a bit too supermodel for the Blue Star people. It is to the extent that taking a photo and posting it on the internet requires mosaics. It is different from the post-war statistics and experience summary of the reinforcement. After seeing the horrible results, we almost jumped up with joy. As an aristocrat in the magic world and an old feudal lord, she has long been accustomed to these fights on the battlefield. Hundreds of thousands of casualties in a war are commonplace in the magic world. Not to mention her, the army in Mengchuan City, and even ordinary residents only sighed that the weapons of these reinforcement were really awesome, but no one thought that killing too many enemies was inhumane. That's how the world is. When fighting, you have to be prepared for death. Whether you kill the enemy or be killed, there will be no moral burden. In other words, people who have been at peace with Blue Star for a long time will feel uncomfortable with such casualties and battlefields afterwards. Wei was not stingy. She directly gave 1,000 barrels of the 5,000 barrels of water of life seized to the reinforcement. She planned to take out 2,000 barrels of the remaining ones as a thank you to Suyi. As for the tens of thousands of tons of magic ingredients, Mengchuan City is currently unable to digest them internally, so it is natural to trade with Suyi. Blue Star. Suyi has not received the news of the great victory of Mengchuan City. But he is not free. After finishing the work of sending reinforcement to the other world, the chain reaction brought about by the previous actions of Xianyu Group in SUO country finally appeared after a delay of 2 days. The Bald Eagle's military aircraft was shot down by the Xianyu Group. The Bald Eagle didn't dare to say a word, but that doesn't mean they will just let the matter go. After sending many elite special forces to approach the pirate town for close reconnaissance, and discovering that it had become a completely empty city, Bald Eagle immediately told the media about the news, which then spread all over the world. In fact, many of those special forces were also arrested by the people left behind by the Xianyu Group security department to deal with the aftermath. There are no close-up shots, but there are plenty of photos taken from a distance with military cameras. Bald Eagle did not dare to say that his overseas garrison was beaten by the exoskeleton warriors of the Xianyu Group security department, and dared not even approach, so he could only say that these photo evidences were taken by passers-by and tourists. Each one was a little blurry, but the empty city and traces of war were enough to show that a battle had indeed taken place here, and there were indeed few people in the city. Moreover, they also found some people who originally lived in the city and escaped from the city when the Xianyu Group took action and asked them to come forward to identify them. They even directly sued the Xianyu Group in Bald Eagle's court. With the help of the Bald Eagle, the news was spread all over the world through the channels of Western media in just 1 day. Suyi was also accused of being anti-human. Chapter 166. These things are certainly not offensive to Suyi. To put it bluntly, Xianyu Group's products have no competitors at all, and they are almost necessary for human development. Therefore, the company's reputation is actually not important at all. But it is not his style to let others slander him. And as for the issue of how to deal with this matter, Xianyu Group already had a plan after solving the pirates on the same day. And it was not difficult to deal with it. First of all, Xianyu Group directly issued a statement admitting that the conflict in the area of Sao country did exist, but all the purposes were to fight pirates and rescue kidnapped merchant ships and crew members out of an irrefutable position of justice. Secondly, regarding the Bald Eagle's claim that Xianyu Group massacred the city and killed everyone in the small town where the pirates were, Xianyu Group naturally could not admit it. The whole process of this battle was filmed by every power armor and exoskeleton on the ground. And there were also drones and landing craft in the sky. Whatever the facts, Xianyu Group had no intention of hiding them at all and directly released all the videos. There are nearly 300 different camera angles, all of which are long videos of more than 2 hours from entering the small town to clearing out the pirates in the city. All the actions were filmed clearly and in great detail. Including how the residents escaped during the battle. All of them were shot with close-ups and special camera angles. Every person killed by the Xianyu Group security department was recorded clearly. Facts have proved that the Xianyu Group security department has never killed an innocent person from beginning to end. They were all attacked first and then fought back. Once these many different camera angles were thrown out, the whole world was silent. Don't ask why they were silent. The answer is that everyone is watching the video. Those who oppose the Xianyu Group want to find flaws in it, while those who support it want to see how the Xianyu Group beats the primitive people like gods. The more amused people, while watching, exclaimed that these power armors and exoskeletons are really awesome, and it is a complete dimensionality reduction attack. There were too many videos, and no one could watch them all in a short period of time. So public opinion calmed down for several days. It was not until many people who were serious or had other purposes watched all the videos that the incident became popular again. After the Bald Eagle found that the Xianyu Group had hardly killed any unarmed people in the whole process, it also knew that the charges against humanity that it had previously accused of were untenable. After all, the Xianyu Group itself said that this was a war Against pirates they are already at war, and you can't not fight back when you encounter an enemy with a gun. Right. As for the unarmed civilians, they didn't kill any of them. What else can you say? Let's not talk about it in the distance. The police of the Bald Eagle would empty the magazines when they encountered armed suspects in peacetime. What qualifications do they have to blame the security guards of the Shia group from this perspective? So when the media interviewed and asked how they viewed this matter, the new spokesperson of the Bald Eagle Black Palace said, after thinking for a long time, it is proven that the Shia group isn't human. They obviously have the most advanced weapons and can completely ignore the backward guns and weapons in the hands of those people, but they still choose to kill all the people who fired the guns. If this is not anti-human, what is it? If they are righteous, they should use their advanced weapons to disarm these people, and then detain them uniformly, and then judge them for the crimes they committed afterwards, instead of directly killing them. Such outrageous remarks really made me laugh. Hahaha, because I have advanced weapons, I can't kill them. Even if I hold a gun to my face, I can only subdue them. Right. There are too many complaints, and I don't know where to start. I don't know if he is praising the good equipment of the Shia group, or accusing the Shia group of killing too many people. There is no war without death. Others are shooting at you, and you are not allowed to shoot back. How can there be such an outrageous thing in the world? That's right. If you ask me, there is absolutely no problem with what Shia group did. The pirates of Sogo are too rampant and lawless. They should be dealt with civilly. Mr. Su did something I always wanted to do, but didn't have the ability to do. This bald eagle can still cry. It was also in this place when the Black Hawk fell. Didn't they want to kill it at that time? Wasn't it surrounded and beaten by a group of pirates? They didn't have the ability, but they didn't allow others who had the ability to do it. It was against the will of heaven. They have always had double standards, strict with others, and lenient with themselves. It is a joke of the century that they should not kill the armed element of the other side when their weapons crush them. As soon as this was said, it quickly caused ridicule. The main reason was that the Bald Eagle used to rely on its leading technology and equipment to do so many bad things. Now it is a bit too abstract to say that others are not allowed to kill the enemy because of their leading equipment. Not only did it fail to attack Shia group as it wished, but it was a disguised advertisement for the power armor and exoskeleton armor of Shia group. The high-tech weapons selected by the Bald Eagle Black Palace can defeat tens of thousands of enemies with only 200 in Black State. And the record is available. Of course, this slogan is a joke, because these equipments of Shia group do not need to be advertised at all now. After those first-person combat videos were released, orders like snowflakes floated to Shia group. Among them, there are not only various countries, but also some small forces that are not countries, such as underground gangs in some regions, or separatist warlords except for the rebellious Sun. In the southeast of Kyushu, Suyi accepts orders from anywhere in the world. Sentinel-1 exoskeleton, as long as you pay, I will sell it. Anyone can come. There are even 2 countries that are at war, and both sides buy exoskeletons from Shia group together. In addition to these countries and some large and small organizations, there are even many individuals who are not short of money who have contributed a large number of orders. After all, this thing can really be used by a single person, and because it has just appeared, countries have not thought about whether to legislate to restrict these things. Many people want to take advantage of the loophole and get themselves a set. First, isn't this much cooler than a supercar? And it's also damn cheap. After wearing it, you can directly become a little Superman. As long as you have money, who can refuse to buy one for yourself? This situation was actually expected by Shia group. Otherwise, Suyi would not have specifically said that Sentinel-1 could be sold at the press conference. Bald Eagle never expected that he wanted to disgust Shia group, but in the end, he gave Shia group's exoskeleton a loud advertisement. Chapter 167. Time went by. For several days the fluctuations of the fishing boats on Blue Star caused by the appearance of Shia group not only did not stop, but also tended to intensify. At the same time, the great victory in the magic world hardly caused any waves on Blue Star. After all, only a few people in the whole Blue Star knew about this. After receiving the battle report handed over by Wee Wee, not to mention Suyi, even Yuling was stunned. She asked, herself that she had a relatively in-depth understanding of the weapons of Blue Star and the various magical means of the magic world, but this batch of reinforcement could achieve such an effect in the first battle, and even completely defeated the million-strong army that surrounded Mengchuan City. This was something she had never thought of before. But after watching the battle report sent by the Jiazhou reinforcement from the magic world, as well as the very professional live video of the battle scene, she had to believe it again. Even after watching the video of the corpses everywhere after the battle, she felt that the number of about 400,000 enemies killed reported by the reinforcement was too conservative. Because of the limited number of people and the fact that their individual combat power is indeed different from that of the people in the magic world. Lin Yilong's support army certainly would not participate in dangerous and dirty work such as cleaning the battlefield. So they did not count the casualties of the enemy in detail. As for the army of the magic world, they would not count them carefully. A rough estimate, based on the confiscated weapons and equipment, would be enough. Some soldiers in Mengchuan City who were responsible for cleaning the battlefield were even more perfunctory than this. They directly dug a big pit and estimated that they could burn thousands of bodies, so they counted by pits. The number of pits filled by the bodies they cleaned up was multiplied by 1000 to get the casualties of the enemy. This cannot be blamed on the people in Mengchuan City. They don't know what's the point of counting how many people died on the other side, so of course they won't care. In short, this battle brought Yuling a great shock. But she didn't start to fear these hot weapons. Although the battle report of Mengchuan City was rough, the number of casualties of those strong men above the 7th level could still be counted clearly. The coalition army is so large, with more than 300 magicians and warriors above level 7, and about 30 to 40 at level 8. There is not a single level 9 warrior. There is an unwritten rule in the magic world, which is said to have been made by those who became gods many years ago. That is, the gods of war, the gods of law, and various demigods are not allowed to intervene in wars between ordinary people. So in the absence of demigods, the level 9 is the highest combat power that can be seen on the battlefield of the magic world. It is probably a nuclear bomb level existence on Blue Star. Speaking of Mengchuan City, there are millions of troops besieging the city and the elf princess personally commanding the troops and supervising the battle. In the final analysis, it is just a local battlefield. Level 9 bosses usually don't appear in such places, and naturally they won't die here. And so many level 7 and level 8 warriors, including those who were captured and whose bodies were found. The effective number of statistics is 9 level 7 warriors and 16 level 7 magicians. No body of a level 8 warrior was found, but 3 level 8 magicians died. One of them is the old priest of the elves. I don't know if he burned more money for his future self when he held a sacrificial ceremony to commemorate the dead. It can be seen that from the perspective of the casualties ratio, the survival rate of warriors on the battlefield is definitely much higher than that of magicians. After all, magicians are weak and their ability to run is far worse than that of warriors. The survival rate is naturally higher. The causes of death of these people can also be explained. Basically, it is because the strong men of Mengchuan City on the city wall saw that the situation was not right and deliberately used means to leave them on the battlefield to be bombed, which led to the deaths of these masters above level 7. If there were no people of equal strength to restrain them, these masters of the magic world who were killed could have escaped calmly and would not have been afraid of these weapons at all. The same principle applies to Blue Star. These weapons are of course a threat to Yuling, but in the absence of masters of the same level to hold them back, masters like these masters above level 7 will not die directly on the battlefield when facing modern firepower attacks. Besides Xinghan, there is no one stronger than her on Blue Star. Xinghan is one of us, so of course he doesn't count. In other words, she is basically invincible on Blue Star. So there is no need to worry too much. Even the two of them who have a certain understanding of both worlds were shocked by the performance of the first battle of the 10,000 reinforcement, not to mention the high-level officials of Jiazhou who knew about it. A battle with hundreds of thousands of casualties would definitely go down in history on Blue Star. But it is nothing in the magic world. The differences brought by the different worlds have brought a great shock to many people on Blue Star. However, the high-level officials of Jiazhou did not become complacent and proud because of this. thinking that they could be invincible in the universe. After letting professional military personnel carefully analyze the details of the defense of Mengchuan City, they generally came to a conclusion that the main reason for achieving such an effect was that the enemy was unprepared for it. I'm afraid it won't be so easy to pass next time. Yes, next time. Through the information obtained from the battle report, they carefully analyzed the current situation in the magic world and finally believed that both the Elf Kingdom and other races would definitely make a comeback. After all, this is not an ordinary war for interests, but a war for survival among the various tribes in the north of the magic world, which is dominated by the elves. They have no way out at all. And with the population density of that world, even if 1,000,000 troops were dispersed this time, they can soon gather an army larger than this one to attack again. This time, they have suffered a great loss in weapons such as artillery. As long as they have enough, they will have protection next time. It will be very difficult to achieve such a result again at that time. In short, in the eyes of those people in Jiuzhou, the factor of luck in this victory accounts for too much, which does not mean anything. Others, if they ask, they will say that I'm very bad, and I'm trembling now. Anyway, pride and complacency are absolutely unacceptable. Of course, if the old man Lin, who is responsible for receiving the spoils of water of life sent by Wei Wei, can be more restrained and not look forward to the next war, this kind of humility will be more credible. In short, regarding the war in the magic world, it seems that Wei Wei has defended Mengchuan City, and there is no need to worry about it, at least in the short term. Su Yi successfully secured a valuable trading partner. Jiuzhou got a large amount of highly concentrated water of life. Of course, after Su Yi handled it, all this water of life was replaced with a diluted version. Wei Wei specifically gave Jiuzhou only 1,000 barrels of water of life. In the end, Su Yi gave Jiuzhou a large amount of diluted water of life that was enough for more than 1 billion people in Jiuzhou to use once and completely eliminate diseases. Although the battlefields of these soldiers were not on Blue Star, they fulfilled their promises in the army in another way and truly worked for the welfare of the people. Chapter 168. Faced with this sudden massive amount of basic version of water of life, the decision of the top management of Jiuzhou was also very decisive. Send free for all people. Every citizen of Jiuzhou is eligible to get one injection unconditionally. For most normal people without major diseases, this one is enough to ensure a peaceful life without getting sick easily. But for many people with cancer or some special intractable diseases, one basic version of water of life is definitely not enough. Jiuzhou's approach is to pay for more than one, and the price is not expensive. Even compared to its price, it is not an exaggeration to say that it is a bargain. But it can only be purchased through Jiuzhou's medical insurance system. The external statement is that Jiuzhou has reached a deep cooperation with Xianyu Group, which has resulted in an unlimited supply of water of life, and water of life has been successfully included in medical insurance. Collecting money is not really for the sake of making this little money. It is just to offset some expenses, and it is also to set a certain threshold to discourage some people who want to have a few bites, even if they are not sick. There is almost no doubt that, if it is completely free, there will definitely be no shortage of such people. Don't test human nature at any time. In contrast, setting a price that is not so expensive and ensuring that everyone who really has a disease can afford it. It is more reasonable than providing it for free to anyone who comes. In order to prevent loopholes, the water of life in Jiuzhou strictly implements the corresponding identity review method. That is, everyone can use one water of life for free with their ID card, and they can buy more. But not only do they need to pay, but the purchase record will also be recorded and synchronized to the online database. So that if there is a problem, the individual can be directly and accurately located when the water of life was bought and how much water of life was bought. At the same time, every water of life, whether it is the free one you already have or the one you bought with extra money, will need to be injected on the spot under the camera, and before the injection, you must make sure that the camera is intact and usable. Ensure that the whereabouts of each water of life can be verified. It completely eliminates the possibility that some people will sell the water of life from the welfare given to the people by the Jiuzhou government. And when this notice was issued, Jiao also specifically explained it at the end of the notice. This thing was made by the official and Xianyu group together. If someone tries to take advantage of it, it will not only violate the laws of Jiao, but also the system of Xianyu group. Once this happens, the official Jiao and Xianyu group will not be responsible for what will happen. Compared with the layers of rules, the deterrent power of this last notice is quite large. In the perception of normal people, although Xianyu group is now in its heyday, it is definitely not as good as Jiao. After all, it is such a big country. A company is not as deterrent as Jiao. But for some people who dare to think about such things, the deterrent power of Xianyu group is really greater than that of Jiao officials. After all, Jiao is very big, and the internal entanglements are also complicated. If there are only one or two such people, they can still kill the chicken to scare the monkey, but with huge interests in front of them, there may be many people who want to sell Jiao's low-priced water of life at a high price through their own channels, and means that this time, it is not easy for the official to deal with it. After all, the law does not hold everyone responsible. Who knows whose relatives or friends did this, but Xianyu group is different. Suyi, who openly rubbed the face of a bald eagle on the ground and directly asked people to fight because the crew was kidnapped, is almost a ruthless person who started a war directly. Or crazy. No one dares to mess with him. Money is a good thing, but you have to be alive to spend it. Besides, even if they don't plan to take the water of life that the official gives to the whole people, they are not without other channels to make money through the water of life. For example, to purchase the water of life sold by Xianyu group. Anyway, the water of life of Xianyu group is still much cheaper in China than abroad, and they can still make a lot of money by buying and selling it as a second-hand dealer, and compared with so many people grabbing it before, they can only buy it from individual investors and then sell it. Now the official gives everyone in Jiao one for free, and those who really need it can also go to the official to buy it at a lower price. There are fewer people who compete with them for the water of life of Xianyu group. Just be a decent second-hand dealer and make some money. It's not worth it if you don't make some money and risk your life. Almost no one would doubt whether Suyi and Xianyu group would dare to kill people if they found out that someone sold Jiao's super low priced water of life to the outside world and damaged the interests of Xianyu group. He has recently told everyone with facts that it is best not to provoke him. In this way, the issue of the distribution of water of life within Jiao has been temporarily settled. Suyi originally thought that he could live in peace for a few days and enjoy life with his beautiful wife and family. Unexpectedly, just after he finished his work, Bailu over there sent new news again. On an ordinary afternoon, he suddenly called Suyi to the trading space. Just now, we know it was interstellar pirates who robbed a transport ship belonging to the Alliance that passed by our Kingayu star. Do you want to guess what good things are on it? As soon as he entered the trading space, Suyi saw the smug look on the face of this little girl and couldn't help shrugging. I can't guess. TSK. Boring. Bailey rolled his eyes at him and then casually threw something that looked like a crystal ball over. This transport ship belongs to the Interstellar Alliance Space Museum, and it contains artifacts from hundreds of years ago. Yi looked at the crystal ball in his hand that looked like a marble, and a question mark floated over his head. This is not a crystal ball, but a storage crystal that was very common in our world hundreds of years ago. Although it has now been replaced by a more efficient field coordinator, it is the real pinnacle product of the physical crystal era. Just this small ball in your hand can store up to 512 EB of information. The one in your hand is said to be the first mass-produced product after the emergence of this crystal as a breakthrough technology. It is very commemorative and has been kept in the Space Museum before. I don't know why it was moved out this time, and it happened to be stolen by me by interstellar pirates on the road. I happened to pass by, and as the commander of the Interstellar Alliance Kingayu Star Orbital Airborne Brigade, I had to take advantage of justice and snatch it back. So, what's the use of this thing? Suyi tossed the marble-shaped crystal in his hand, feeling a little novel, but didn't find any use for it. Chapter 169. A single crystal is valuable to Bailu and others because it has commemorative significance point, but the commemorative meaning is meaningless in a place like Blue Star that cannot be touched by 8 poles, to put it bluntly. Isn't this just a large spherical memory card? He didn't have the equipment to decode the contents when he took it back. Point besides, it's hard to say whether there is any useful information in it. You actually ask me what's the use? Have I ever given you useless things? Bailu said with a look of disgust. Don't pay me back. Of course, it was less than a little. Suyi calmly put it in his pocket and said, that won't work. You should first tell me what this thing is for, right? You can't just call me here just to show me the antique you just grabbed. Someone asks me about nuclear fusion every day. Isn't that inside? Bailu raised his eyebrows and said, you didn't expect it, did you? I didn't expect it either. The cold nuclear fusion and heavy nuclear fusion technologies in our world have very high confidentiality levels. It is difficult to obtain them for you without special channels. Moreover, the industrial base of your world is too weak. Even if I bring out some of the technologies, I guess you can't understand it, but it's almost impossible to get a complete set of this kind of confidentiality technology. As for the earlier thermonuclear fusion, it has been eliminated here for hundreds of years. The technical information is only backed up in some high-level Alliance archives, and it is difficult for me to get it. There are many technical geeks who understand these technologies. Originally, I wanted to find a few technical geeks who know this on the Alliance's network to see if I could get a relatively complete set of energy using thermonuclear fusion reactor technical information for you. I didn't expect to find such an antique inexplicably. It turns out that the antique actually contains a complete set of thermonuclear fusion technology, from the first generation of fusion reactors using tritium and deuterium as fuel, to helium-3, to the mature third generation thermonuclear fusion that uses composite materials to freely design the reactor size and output power according to usage conditions. A complete set of technical information is stored here. How detailed is it? Let me tell you this. It starts with blacksmithing and teaches you how to create a fusion reactor. As long as your civilization can use iron tools and take this information, it will take at most 100 years to build a nuclear fusion reactor. For a world that has entered industrialization and even has some research on nuclear fusion, with this information, I can say without exaggeration that, as long as you are willing to invest enough manpower and material resources, you can do it in at most 2 months. See your world's first reactor built. Lu was very confident in what he said, and he didn't seem to worry about boasting too much. Suyi quickly took out the bead and looked it up and down, and then said, so how should I check the information inside? You didn't even give me a card reader or anything. The smart brain I gave you before can read the data inside without you having to read it. Bailu said speechlessly. That massive amount of literature and information printed on white paper might not fit in a starship. You still plan to have people read it slowly? Then don't think about it in 2 months. I'll give it to you in 20 years. It's not necessarily possible to sort out the information. Oh, that's it. Suyi didn't care much about her tone. The two of them were already very familiar with each other. Bailu was not the aristocratic young lady like Wei who was very particular about etiquette. She had a gangster spirit about her, and she was almost like a brother-in-law with Suyi. Of course there is nothing polite to say. To among friends is cautious and respectful when talking to each other. So, what do you want? Suyi asked serious questions. In fact, compared to those things she had given before, this set of nuclear fusion technology is truly priceless. Powered armor exoskeletons. These things are actually castles in the air in Blue Star, and they have no theoretical support. Shianayu Group just has the production line in hand and can make this thing. What is the specific principle? It means that both eyes are black and point. And if this set of nuclear fusion technology is true to what Bailu said, it will allow civilizations that can only use iron tools to quickly build nuclear fusion. The technical information in it is absolutely very detailed. Not only can Suyi directly start manufacturing now, but when the time comes, and Chi will sort out the information, He will be confident that he can break apart these technologies and completely understand them in 3 to 5 years at most point by then, even if there is no production line provided by Bailu, or even the trading platform in the city, he will be able to fully master this technology point. And really speaking, the significance of nuclear fusion to Blue Star people is much more important than carbon-based wafers, metal hydrogen batteries, exoskeletons and the like. Point energy is just 2 words, but it is almost the source of most conflicts on Blue Star, and having nuclear fusion means having nearly unlimited energy. Point from now on, the history of mankind on Blue Star will be completely turned over and written into a new chapter. This is no longer an empty statement, but a reality. Point. This is much more important than those piecemeal high-tech products and wafer technology. Point. For a world without nuclear fusion, the value would be almost immeasurable. No matter what you want, it's up to you, buddies. Bailey waved his hand indifferently. If you have those special ingredients or the water of life, just give me some of these little things. If you don't have much, forget it. Just give me something. Don't forget me when you have something good in the future. So, Yi was shocked. When he said this, Bailu couldn't have been unaware of what nuclear fusion technology meant to Blue Star, but she still gave it to him so readily. Point. She didn't even ask for anything. Point. This sister is really good. No wonder she can be a senior general in the official organization of their world, even though she is doing murder and arson, and no one said to report her who wouldn't work hard for such a generous leader. Su Yi wanted to get along with her. Cough cough. It just so happens that the water of life is relatively abundant recently, since she showed her sincerity to him. Su Yi is certainly not a errand boy. Point. When he just seized 2,000 barrels of water of life and gave them to him, and he took out 500 barrels directly. The concentration of these waters of life is much higher than the ones I gave you before. The previous ones can only keep you healthy and prevent you from getting sick. This one can really prolong your life, and if you drink a lot, the quantitative change will lead to qualitative change, just like me. As he said this, Su Yi found a rubber as thick as a baby's arm from his private space, pressed both ends, and exerted force. Point. The rubber was bent immediately. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 170. Bailu took the rubber bent by Su Yi and subconsciously broke it with force. Well, it doesn't even move. She calmly took a step back and entered the power armor, then picked up the rubber, gently broke it, and directly connected the head and tail of the rubber. General. Bailu casually threw the thing aside, but seemed to feel that his remarks were too pretentious, so after thinking about it, he added, I mean the quality of steel in your world is average. Oh, I thought you said my strength is average, and not as strong as your power armor. Su Yi exclaimed, so, if you want to achieve your physical strength, how much water of life do you need to drink? Bailu decisively changed the topic. It's hard to say. Su Yi shook his head. This is not because Bailu is perfunctory, but because he himself doesn't know how much he drank. And it's hard to say whether his condition was caused by drinking the water of life. If that's true, it only took a few months for him to obtain the water of life. How much could he drink? Then he could tell Bailu to make a few buckets of water of life and eat more magic ingredients on weekdays, and it would almost have the same effect. He would have said this even just a few days ago and would have had no problem with it. But since Guang discovered something unusual about Yuling, he realized that things were not that simple. If the core of the fountain of life really merged with Yuling in some form, she would now be a human elixir. So Su Yi felt that his current brute strength was not so much the result of drinking the water of life, but he was more willing to believe that it was caused by sleeping with Yuling in his arms every day. What kind of water of life? How can there be any girl juice to replenish people? So he wasn't quite sure what his situation was now. Even a demigod like Xinghan couldn't explain it. Of course, drinking too much water of life with this concentration will make the body stronger, even much stronger than ordinary people. This is also true. Didn't you say that this thing can be sold as medicine after being diluted in your world? You are not sure about the specific data on the medicine? Bailu said in shock. Anyway, just be nice to people. You haven't been drinking too much lately. Let's talk about whether your physical fitness has improved in all aspects, right? Can those ailments be cured? Can elderly people rejuvenate themselves after drinking it? As long as it works, that's it. What do you care about these messy data parameters? Suyi said matter-of-factly. I'm too lazy to test this stuff. Hiss. Bailu looked at the several large buckets of water of life in front of him and took a breath. It's a pity that you were born in the wrong world. Otherwise, a profiteer like you would either spend his whole life in an interstellar prison or be the boss of a giant company. Those who can build a company to the level of a giant company need a face like yours. I have a thick heart, and I'm indeed too upright to be a capitalist. Pull him down quickly. You are a murderer and a traitor without blinking an eye. I never expected that the word integrity could come out of your mouth. Suyi said with disdain. Bailu didn't care and asked while looking at the hundreds of barrels of water of life. Go away. Go away. I won't talk to you. I'm in a good mood today. If you want anything else, make a reservation and I'll grab it for you. Then give me a few Star Destroyers. Suyi opened his mouth. Bailu gave him a look. The Star Destroyers near our Jade Star are all acquaintances, so it's not easy to attack them. I'll let you know when a Star Destroyer from other places passes by. Then take that Superman you're talking about and ask her to kill everyone in the Star Destroyer, and then I can put this thing into the storage space and take it away. We have already agreed on this before. I'm asking you what you want recently, and I will find a way to give it to you. There is really something urgently needed. Suyi thought for a moment and said, do you have anything over there that can intercept weapons that travel 10 or even dozens of times the speed of sound? Do you still need to stop something so slow? Bailu looked strange, but he immediately reacted. Oh, you mean inside the atmosphere? Of course. At this point, she suddenly got stuck. After thinking for a long time, she couldn't think of anything that could have this effect. In the end, she could only shake her head and said, we are fighting in the starry sky. Why are we blocking toys in the atmosphere? Won't you also land on the surface? How to deal with high-speed kinetic energy weapons in other people's atmosphere. For example, missiles loaded with nuclear warheads. The Star Destroyer has a similar function, which is to shoot it if you find something suspicious. Bailu said helplessly. Actually, the weapons you mentioned have long been eliminated in our world. It's something that no one will use, and certainly no one will develop. Suyi heard what she said and felt that what she said made sense. People fight in the starry sky. If the battlefield in the starry sky fails, it is equivalent to the two blue star countries now fighting, and one side has lost its air supremacy. You will only be bombed on the surface. So what if you develop a more powerful weapon in the atmosphere? Their Star Destroyers are patrolling in the starry sky 24 hours a day. If you only fire them out with one shot, you might risk destroying the entire base. No one uses such backward weapons as missiles and nuclear bombs, so of course there will be no corresponding protective measures. Hey, then this won't be easy. Suyi had a headache. The reason why he is still arguing with those countries on Blue Star is because he doesn't just go over with a wave of the main concern is that they possess self-destructive weapons such as nuclear weapons. Actually, it's not completely impossible. Bailu suddenly rubbed his chin and said, kinetic energy weapons are also very common in starry sky battlefields. In addition to kinetic energy weapons, ships traveling in the starry sky also need to guard against the impact of small celestial bodies such as meteorites or space junk in the universe. The speed of these things can be faster than you can say. That's much faster than 10 times the speed of sound. However, this kind of defense system is usually installed on starships and powered by the reactor inside the starship. Energy loss is not considered at all. If you want it, I'm afraid you have to build a reactor specifically for it. And I think here it's not easy to get it for you. We have to find a way to find a starship in our brigade to dismantle a set for you. It's not easy to do. A military transport ship was just reported damaged 2 days ago. At least it has to be. Let's wait for another month or two. You can use this time to prepare the reactor. Chapter 171. dismantling a close-in defense system directly from the starship and making a special nuclear fusion power supply was a solution that Suyi had not thought of. But when I think about it carefully, there seems to be no problem. It can be used as the last barrier to protect the spacecraft in the complex starry sky illusion. The accuracy is definitely no problem, and the coverage size should not be a problem either. After all, a small place like Penglay Island may not be as good as a large starship. Intercontinental ballistic missiles with re-entry speeds of tens of Mach are an almost unsolvable means of penetration on Blue Star, but for this defense system, the speed is probably no different than the crawling of ants, if you can really get a set and put it on the island. You don't have to worry about Penglay Island being nuked. But the problem is that once a nuclear war breaks out, his island will definitely be bombed. When the whole world is bombed into rubble, what's the use of saving an island? So, do you want this thing? Forget it if you don't want it. It saves me the trouble of dismantling it. Bailu asked again. Yes, why don't you want it? Suyi nodded quickly without thinking. Just kidding. Although this thing has limited uses, it is better than nothing. Seeing that he was not very satisfied with this, Bailu thought for a while and said, actually, we also have a weapon here that may be able to solve your problem, but this weapon has a huge impact and the consequences are difficult to predict once it is used. What? Weapon? Planetary scale magnetic shielding device. Magnetic field shielding device? Suyi was stunned for a moment, then guessed based on the name. You mean this thing can disrupt a planet's magnetic field? Even if those ballistic missiles use inertial guidance, they can't even find their direction, and can't hit their target without satellites. No, this thing is far more powerful than you think, and the actual effect is much more outrageous than its name. Bailu explained. To put it simply, if you send this to a certain planet, most of the conductors on the planet can become insulators in a short period of time, blocking all electrical signals. Do you know what this means? Wait a minute. The conductor becomes an insulator? Suyi couldn't help but be stunned for a moment, and then realized the seriousness of the problem. The final result of the conductor turning into an insulator is that all the electrified equipment on Blue Star will fail, and everyone will return from the industrial era to the agricultural era. Since the discovery of electricity, humans on Blue Star have been unable to live without it. Once this thing is used, it is equivalent to shutting down the entire planet. No matter how simple and brainless the design of an intercontinental missile is, once the conductor inside becomes an insulator, it will be impossible to launch it. This is just one of the consequences of all conductors becoming insulators. There are many more serious consequences. If you can turn a conductor into an insulator and block all electrical signals on a planet in a short period of time, Suyi pondered, then everyone will die suddenly, right? Don't think that only modern industrial products can use electricity. In fact, every living thing has bioelectricity. Apart from anything else, at least human nerve signals are a kind of electrical signals. If the human body becomes an insulator, Suyi Xiang thought it was still a bit outrageous. The living thing itself is protected by the biomagnetic field, so it will not be affected by this weapon. It only targets dead objects. Bailu explained. After use, all communication methods on the entire planet, except sound waves, will fail, and all slightly more complex weapons with conductors inside will also fail. At the same time, it will also lead to large-scale disasters on the planet, such as a large number of viruses leaking out of some biological laboratories due to equipment failure. In short, this thing is a double-edged sword. The Interstellar Alliance developed this kind of weapon to deal with the suppression of the Earth's surface, because some civilizations will deploy weapons on the planet that can attack ships in the universe. If these weapons continue to be fired, these weapons will become ineffective in transport combatants. The ship can successfully approach and deliver the orbital airborne troops to the surface, because it is used against the enemy. It certainly does not consider what chain reactions it will cause, but it's different for you. If you want to use it on the Blue Star where you live, it will most likely lead to many unpredictable results. The biological virus leakage mentioned above is just one of the possibilities. Since your world has been able to initially, if you use nuclear energy, and have done some research on nuclear fusion, you must already have simple nuclear fission technology. It is very likely that a nuclear leak will occur at that time, and I also need to tell you this in advance. In addition, this thing is actually not easy to get. It is a weapon that is under the Alliance's key control and is not available on Sapphire Star. If you want it, I will have to spend time looking for it. I may not be able to get it in the short term, disrupting the magnetic field that shields the entire planet and turning all the conductors on the planet into insulators. This kind of weapon is no different from a miracle. Suyi couldn't help but side point. No matter how you look at it, this thing is a bit exaggerated. It is one of the most cutting-edge weapons here. When technology is too advanced, it is no different from magic. What you said is actually right. If you can get it, come here at once. If you can't get it, forget it. There's no need to force it. Although he hasn't gotten this thing yet, Suyi can already imagine how to operate it. After firing it on Blue Star, it doesn't matter if any technology and machinery cannot be used. He still has magic. In this case, the warriors and magicians in the magic world can completely conquer the world in a short period of time and destroy all existing weapons of mass destruction and manufacturing equipment on Blue Star when the effect of electromagnetic shielding is over. It will be a done deal and everything will be over. However, as Bailu said, the cost of using such weapons will be very high, not to mention chemical leaks and nuclear leaks. Some people who rely on machines to survive may all die in the first place. For example, some patients who can only survive with artificial lungs and ventilators, or patients with uremia who need to use machine dialysis in a fixed period. There will be big problems due to the chain reaction caused by the failure of these equipment. Of course, these problems can only occur outside Jiuzhou, because Jiuzhou people have the water of life. As long as they discuss and arrange with Jiuzhou officials in advance, the probability of accidents is relatively small. It is the inconvenience of not being able to use any electromagnetic equipment during the electromagnetic shielding period that needs to be overcome. But if this can completely eliminate the nuclear threat on Blue Star, then this price is worth it for both Suyi and the people of Jiuzhou. Chapter 172. This kind of weapon is still a fantasy in the air. Bailu herself said that it is difficult for her to get it. It depends on luck. Just like the entire 3 generations of nuclear fusion technology introduced this time. Thermonuclear fusion is almost lost in public information because it is too backward. The planet level electromagnetic shielding device is too advanced, so the Interstellar Alliance, the ruler of their world, keeps it from being leaked. She was able to get this thing this time mainly because of luck. She dressed as a robber every day and went out to rob and bring back cultural relics, which happened to contain epoch-making and awesome technology. I'm afraid it won't be so easy to recreate it again. Suyi doesn't have to think about it in the short term. Thinking so much, it is better to build nuclear fusion in Blue Star as soon as possible, lest Bailu dismantles the close-in defense system on the starship and there is not enough energy to support it. That would be embarrassing. His mind was very clear, so the first thing he did when he returned to Blue Star was to give the storage card, no, it should be called a storage ball, to Xianshu. The amount of information inside was so large that it took even Xianshu a few minutes to fully receive it. Then it took a short while to formulate several plans for Suyi to build a nuclear fusion experimental reactor based on these data plan. Yes, it is an experimental pile, not a direct product. This is very important. After all, it comes from another world. Although Bailu assured that this is a mature technology and there will be no problems, it is difficult to say whether the physical rules will be different between different worlds. What Suyi requested was to quickly build a nuclear fusion reactor directly, based on existing data. This meant that there was not much time to thoroughly understand the technical data, and the only way to achieve success was to follow the script. If there are some differences in physical rules between the 2 worlds, then construction failure is inevitable. Therefore, when we are not sure that the information is 100% applicable to Blue Star, but we are eager to build a reactor and do not have much time, To do it, it is inevitable to build an experimental reactor to conduct feasibility studies. Otherwise, if we really use this technical information, that is not sure whether it is effective to build fusion reactors on a large scale. If it doesn't work, it will be a shame. Not only is it embarrassing, but mistakes and omissions may even lead to disasters such as nuclear leakage. Although the radiation brought by fusion is far less than that of fission, there is still radiation. Just like the hydrogen bomb. In theory, the hydrogen bomb itself does not have any pollution or radiation, but in fact it requires an atomic bomb to detonate the hydrogen bomb. So even if it is a hydrogen bomb, there will be radiation when it explodes. Penglay Island is too small. If you only plan to build an experimental reactor at the beginning, I think you should find a suitable place outside. Although Penglay Island is small, it was originally designed to accommodate a large number of people. The demand for electrical energy will be huge. A small experimental reactor may not be able to meet the island's power needs. Therefore, an experiment was built on the island. There is a high probability that we will need to dismantle it and build a larger one in the future, which is undoubtedly a waste of resources. After the demonstration is effective in other places, it is the best plan to build a large-scale fusion reactor on the island that can meet the upper limit of the population of Penglay Island. So, you naturally would not refuse this. The second issue is the lack of money. The main reason is that it would be too troublesome to replace it temporarily when it is no longer used. A small fusion reactor can satisfy the electricity needs of a city with a population of several million, but Penglay Island was designed to accommodate a population of tens of millions. Sooner or later there won't be enough. Then, where do you think is the most suitable place to build this commercial controllable nuclear fusion experimental reactor? Now that the method has been finalized, the next step is to specifically address where and how to address these issues. Chianshu gave the answer immediately. Oh. Suyu was stunned for a moment and said with interest, "Why Chianshu? I thought you were going to talk about the small town in Suo Kingdom that is no longer deserted." There are many reasons, Chianshu explained. First of all, in terms of industry, what we got this time were only technical data and drawings. Everything we needed had to be made by ourselves. Although there is no shortage of everything on Penglay Island, there is no industrial foundation. It's impossible to build a nuclear fusion reactor by yourself in the short term. Jiaozhou is different, as Blue Star has the strongest industrial base today and is the only country with all industrial categories. Building this experimental reactor in Jiaozhou will be much more convenient in all aspects, especially regarding the purchase of some equipment, and this is true for equipment customization. Even if we don't build an experimental reactor in Kyushu, if we want to build this experimental reactor quickly, we cannot do without the help of Kyushu industry. At least we have to choose the construction site closer to Kyushu. Sir, you have a good relationship with Kyushu, and they themselves should be very happy to see the first commercially available controllable nuclear fusion experimental reactor in human history settled in Kyushu, and they will definitely provide full assistance when the time comes. This is obviously all true. If the things on the drawings are to be realized quickly, they cannot be realized without industrial support, and no country in the world except Kyushu can supply these parts. When he decided not to build the experimental reactor on Penglay Island, Suyi had actually already thought about where it would be built. This is almost without any suspense. There is only one place to choose from, Kyushu. As for Kyushu officials, it is obviously impossible to refuse such a good thing. Building an experimental reactor does have certain risks, but to put it bluntly, this is nuclear fusion, not nuclear fission. Even if an accidental leak occurs, it will not have as serious an impact as nuclear fission, and it can be easily handled. Moreover, Jiaozhou is vast and rich in resources, and it is not a problem to find a place with sparse population around to build it. And as the first usable nuclear fusion device in human history, the impact that this thing can bring when it is settled in Jiaozhou is really too great. So great that anyone who participates in this Matter in this era will be 100% remembered in history after success, and the family tree will open a separate page, and when future generations pay homage to their ancestors, they will 100% eat the first incense. Obviously, this is a temptation that no one in Jiazhou can refuse. The only thing that Jiazhou people are a little worried about is whether this technology is effective or not. And they are afraid that they will be lonely after all the work. But the words Shianayu group can completely dispel their concerns in this regard. So there is no need to consider the issue of Jiazhou's rejection. Chapter 173. By the way, sir, in addition to the above reasons, I think there is another important reason why it is more appropriate to build in Jiazhou. Xianshu continued, this reason is about war. There is no doubt that once mature controllable nuclear fusion technology comes out, it will have a huge and disruptive impact on Blue Star's existing world order. It is no exaggeration to say that once it is built and confirmed to be effective, the people and forces who built it will become the target of public criticism, and it is not impossible to even trigger a nuclear war and suffer a strategic strike. After all, once controllable nuclear fusion is successfully commercialized, those countries that rely on selling energy for a living may no longer be able to live in such luxury as they are now. This is second to none. The most important thing is that a certain country on Blue Star relies on energy to harvest the world's wealth. Once the oil related to their sword is no longer a necessity as energy, the value of sword will plummet. This is undoubtedly gnawing at their hearts, and it is difficult to guarantee that they will not take action, and if they do not understand our armor, and they are very afraid and even afraid. So, for them, the easiest way is to use nuclear bombs directly to wipe out our experimental facilities in Penglai Island. After all, no matter how powerful our armor is, it cannot withstand intercontinental ballistic missiles with terminal penetration speeds of tens of Mach, and building it in Kyushu will undoubtedly allow Kyushu to share the risk, compared with Penglai Island, which has no power to fight back after being hit by a nuclear attack, and they only have to bear some infamy at most. Kyushu has an equivalent restrained nuclear weapons, unless those people are really crazy and don't hesitate to cause a world war and wipe out the entire world with nuclear weapons. They will never dare to throw that thing at Kyushu. After all, the joy of swords does not lie in the oil link, and it can no longer harvest the world. For the top brass of the Bald Eagle Empire, the world's wealth is just a matter of making some money. They might do it to blow up Penglai Island and be criticized for using nuclear weapons at will to protect their own interests. But they will definitely not do it to blow up Kyushu and then drag the whole world into the funeral. Whether it means making less money or losing money, to put it bluntly, it will not have that big of an impact on those Bald Eagle executives who can really decide whether to launch the big mushroom. It will not prevent them from continuing to be leaders, but if it triggers a nuclear war, even if they manage to survive from the underground bunker, no one can exploit them. They may even lose their lives. This is the real loss of blood. So, I think that if the nuclear fusion experiment is piled on Penglai Island or other places outside Kyushu, the possibility of being hit by a nuclear attack is very high. If it is placed in Kyushu, this possibility is very small. When Suyi heard the words, he felt that what he said was quite reasonable. If he thought about it carefully, it was indeed the case. Mature commercial controllable nuclear fusion is indeed a bit too supermodel, and will definitely make many people anxious. The risk on Penglai Island is still too high. It's completely different in Kyushu. In this world, having nuclear deterrence and not having nuclear deterrence are completely different things. Given the weakness of those capitalists, the loss of benefits from nuclear fusion is certainly heartbreaking. So the use of nuclear strikes against a place without weapons of mass destruction is completely within their acceptable range. But all this is based on the premise that Shianayu group is bombed and unable to fight back. If it were Kyushu, these noble men would not want to bring the whole world with them and let everyone die together. It's better to endure it and continue to be their noble master. It's really not worth risking your life for a few bucks. Suyi didn't feel too bad about Penglai Island being hit by a nuclear attack. Anyway, if it was bombed, it would be a big deal to rebuild it. With planetary mining machines and large building blocks, rebuilding wasn't a big deal for him. Although the near defense system provided by Baylor is not yet in place, it will not affect the problem of island residents running away. Regardless of the fact that, when Pengley Island was designed and manufactured, Pengley Island was already prepared for emergencies with a depth of more than 1,000 meters underground. Underground shelter, or a landing craft, that can carry many people to escape, both of which can ensure that there will be no casualties, but that would be trouble after all. What he hates most is those troublesome things. If you make it in Kyushu, you can avoid almost 99% of the trouble, so why not? This wave. Suyui regards it as giving back to his hometown. After discussing some rough plans with Shienshu, Suyui called Old Man Lin. Hey, Director Su, what's going on? As the person designated by the top officials of Kyushu to contact Suyui, his call was answered as soon as he called point. Even though it was already late at night on Pengley Island, Langsing estimated that it was just early the next morning, which would not prevent him from picking up the phone in seconds. Old Lin, I congratulate you on getting rich. Suyui opened his mouth to congratulate him. Old Lin, who had just been woken up to answer the phone, was confused. Am I getting rich? How am I getting rich? Oh, no, congratulations on your promotion. Suyui immediately replied. It's even worse for Old Man Lin. As a former veteran, if he hadn't taken the initiative to retire when he was old, there would probably be few people in Kyushu who could be higher than him. The reason why he holds such an idle position now is because he wants to give more to the country. After receiving the water of life, I want to contribute, but I don't want to get too involved. Otherwise, why should I be such an operator if I don't have any important position? Congratulations to him for his promotion to a person who has no interest in these things. It's okay, let's talk if you have something to say. Old man, I was woken up by a phone call from you in the middle of the night. I can't just listen to your nonsense. Old Man Lin yawned. I have a good thing I want to build in Kyushu. What? Good stuff. Controllable nuclear fusion, and theoretically, our Shianayu group's technical staff believe that this plan is completely mature, with a feasibility of over 90%. Suyui did not give up on him, and directly released the ultimate bomb. Old Man Lin's silence was deafening. After a while, Suyui was afraid that he would die from excitement when he heard such big news on the other end of the phone, so he couldn't help but ask, hey, where are you? Don't get excited and lose your temper, right? I'm not responsible. Don't try to blackmail me. Only then did Old Lin come to his senses and stopped bickering with Suyui. He quickly asked with heavy breathing, are you sure you can achieve commercial controlled nuclear fusion? Sure. You sure you want to build the first reactor in Kyushu? Sure. You forget it. Send that spaceship of yours over here. Old man, I'll go tell you face to face. Old Man Lin got up from the bed in a hurry. Sleep with chicken feathers. Compared to such a major event that can affect the future of the country, the nation, and even all mankind is still in front of us. Even if I haven't slept for 3 days and 3 nights, I can't sleep at all now. Chapter 174. In just a moment, Old Man Lin rushed to Pengley Island, where the Shianayu group's headquarters is located. In a landing craft. He landed directly on the roof of the building. Suyui was waiting for him in the office room on the roof. As soon as the two met, Old Man Lin couldn't wait to say, Mr. Su, is the nuclear fusion you mentioned true or false? How can I make fun of you in the middle of the night? Suyui smiled and waved his hand. The current situation is that our theoretical technology is fully mature, but because we haven't built an experimental reactor for demonstration, we want to build an experimental reactor. This kind of thing can't be hidden from others. Not only do I have to build a reactor, I also need to recruit a large number of experienced nuclear physicists. Once the construction starts, many people will soon know about it. Nuclear fusion, coupled with the name of the Shianayu group, which is now in the limelight, will definitely attract huge attention. I discussed with other senior executives of the group and thought that putting this experimental reactor, it might be a bit dangerous to build it on Pengley Island. You know, this kind of thing, once it is really successful, it will undoubtedly cut off their financial resources for some countries. Since ancient times, cutting off someone's financial resources is like killing their parents. You can't guarantee that they will be desperate if I just use conventional methods to send troops to attack Shianayu group. I'm not very afraid. But my main worry is that they will be so crazy that they will directly use nuclear weapons. In this case, the newly built Penglay Island may not be able to be saved, so I want to find a place to build this experimental reactor. This place must not only have complete basic industries, but also meet some conditions for building nuclear fusion reactors, such as no shortage of water. In addition, the most important thing is that this place must also use the same level of nuclear deterrence capabilities to make those gangs, even the crazy white people who have been cut off from their money, don't dare to do anything reckless. I think that given the weakness of the bourgeoisie, even if these people can't hold the lifeline of the world's energy and their lives are far from being as good as before, they shouldn't be desperate enough to drag the whole world to self-destruct. After hearing what Suyi said, Old Man Lin immediately became energetic. Then isn't this talking about RGS how? Don't worry, I have communicated with the higher-ups on the way here. They attach great importance to this matter and gave me a lot of permission. If you think Jiazhou is suitable for building a nuclear fusion reactor, just point to a place and we will solve the rest of the problems. During the construction of the nuclear fusion reactor, if you need any parts or industrial raw materials, just make a list and I will find them for you. As long as I can get you anything that Jiazhou has within 3 days. As for external threats, the only ones who will go crazy because of this thing are the bald eagles that control the world's oil trade. I won't say much about other things. Jiazhou has never been afraid of them. When I supported Betty Luo, I personally carried a gun to the battlefield and killed more than 20 enemies. I was not afraid then, so how can I be afraid of him now? Don't worry, I have dealt with those bald eagle guys. If this thing is placed on your island, they may really go crazy and throw mushrooms. If it is placed in Jiazhou, they will definitely not dare to fight to the death. No one cherishes their lives and their current status more than them. Old Man Lin slapped his chest, obviously not taking the bald eagle seriously. Point after all, he was an old soldier who faced the bald eagle on the battlefield in his early years. He still has this courage. That's great. So Yi nodded and said, then let's talk about what will happen after the experimental reactor is built. In order to meet the deadline and complete the experiment as soon as possible to build the first commercial nuclear fusion reactor, our Shianayu group plans to complete it within 2 months. During this period, I'm afraid your cooperation and help are indispensable, plus the cost of occupying the land. I currently have 2 plans. One is that everyone settles the accounts clearly, and then Shianayu group will pay Jiazhou as much as it should, and even the price can be negotiated higher, and everything will not be a problem. The other is to cooperate in joint research and development. At present, we lack a large number of nuclear physicists, and Jiazhou obviously has no shortage of them. On the basis of cooperating with us to build a nuclear fusion reactor, Jiazhou will send another batch of nuclear physicists. We don't care how many can come, and we will accept as many as they come. Less. The wages and benefits of these people are all provided by Jiazhou. We are only responsible for teaching them some knowledge related to building this reactor. I don't care whether they join Shianayu group afterwards. It depends on how you do your job. Under this premise, the core of this plan is that this nuclear fusion reactor is built. After confirming that our plan is effective and reliable, we don't need it anymore. We can hand it over to Jiazhou officials to manage and operate it. I don't care whether you integrate it into the national power grid and continue to use it or disassemble it for research. Then we will share some of the technology for designing and building this nuclear fusion reactor with Jiazhou. You can also build it yourself. Of course, the core part will still be controlled by Shianayu group. At that time, we will make the core of nuclear fusion into a giant whole, and then sell it to Jiazhou as the core part of nuclear fusion. Regarding the supply of this thing, we can sign another contract later, to ensure the stability of supply. Even after you confirm that this thing is effective, you can purchase more at one time as a strategic reserve. This will also facilitate Jiazhou to build a nuclear fusion reactor on its own in the future. So, Yi said very bluntly that most of the technology related to the first generation nuclear fusion reactor can be given to Jiazhou as a reward for this help, but the core part must not be given. After all, it is just to provide some convenience, and it can also increase a lot of employment and positions for Jiazhou, so it is enough to give so much as for the subsequent development of the second generation nuclear fusion reactor. Based on the information given by Bailu, whether the first generation technology needs to be retained is up for discussion. When he really plans to sell this technology, he will definitely consider Jiazhou first. There is no suspense about this. After all, this is his home. Who doesn't want his home to be better? But emotions are emotions. And business is business. It is definitely impossible to give this technology away for free. Even children who have moved out and are independent cannot give all their savings to their parents, not to mention between a company and a country. Any seemingly ordinary regulation may affect the production and life of countless people. No room for chaos. Chapter 175. Of course, Old Man Lin chose the latter without thinking about the two plans proposed by Su Yi. If he just wanted to help build a nuclear fusion reactor, he would not have gotten up in the middle of the night. Jiazhou's goal has always been clear. Xianyu Group said that it has mature commercial nuclear fusion technology, so they came. The purpose is for technology, not for business. Otherwise, it would be impossible for Old Man Lin to directly say that he could give Su Yi all kinds of preferential treatment and conveniences as soon as he came. And Old Man Lin didn't mind Su Yi's attitude of settling accounts with brothers many times. This is the case. When an organization grows to a certain extent, it rarely talks about personal feelings. Su Yi is Jiazhou, but Su Yi is Su Yi, and Xianyu Group is Xianyu Group. They didn't expect that Xianyu Group would hand over nuclear fusion, an important technology that can change the world, out of thin air, because of such a small relationship. They didn't come with the idea of getting something for free at the beginning, so naturally they wouldn't be broken by other people's brothers settling accounts with each other. On the contrary, seeing that there was still room for technical discussion, Old Man Lin was very happy. He was afraid that Xianyu Group just wanted to use Jiazhou as a tool and did not intend to discuss any technical issues at all. Now that there is something to discuss, it is of course the best point, because this kind of big thing involves a lot of things. The two of them talked while contacting other people to ask questions. Su Yi encountered some things that he did not understand for the time being, so he could only ask Xianchu. As for Old Man Lin, he had already contacted the top management of Jiazhou when he boarded the landing craft. At this time, Jiazhou had organized a team of experts in various fields such as nuclear physics and electricity, waiting for Old Man Lin to contact him and solve some professional problems for him at any time. As for the decision-making problem, there is no need to ask others. Old Man Lin had been granted extremely high authorization before he came, and he could make his own decision. Finally, after several hours of discussion, the two finally reached a consensus. The site selection of the first thermonuclear fusion experimental reactor was also determined. The location is Kayang Island in the southern waters of Jiazhou. There are many reasons for choosing this place. First of all, the first generation of nuclear fusion technology has many limitations, one of which is that it requires a lot of water. Freshwater resources in rivers are too precious. If something goes wrong and they are polluted, it will really become a sinner. So this location is best to be close to the sea. The seas to the east and southeast are actually not that safe. Both sides have neighbors who are not very friendly and cannot be dealt with in a short time, and there is also a rebellious son who is ungrateful. If construction is started there, if someone is desperate, even if nuclear bombs are not used, conventional weapons are likely to affect the reactor under construction. Kayangdao is different. It is backed by the mainland and faces a vast southern sea. The only neighboring country is Baiyu. Let's not talk about whether Baiyu will go crazy, but compared with those neighbors in the east and southeast seas, the Jiazhou government is confident that Baiyu will not go crazy, even if it wants to. As for the threat from the sea, the southern sea is also wide enough As long as preparations are made in advance, there is enough depth to arrange defenses so this seemingly remote island is actually a very safe location. After discussing all the details, Old Man Lin hurried away with a few recorders for memos. He still took the landing craft of Xianyu Group point of course. This thing is no longer a secret among the top leaders of Jiazhou, and it has even been openly shown around the world before. It is still a bit inappropriate to call it a landing craft all the time. So, in order to be more formal, Suyi just gave this specification of landing craft a name. Mayfly class near Earth space vehicle. When Old Man Lin heard this name for the first time, he was a little confused. He pointed at it and asked Suyi why such a big thing was called Mayfly. Suyi smiled and didn't explain at all. Compared with the giant starships in Bailu's world, this thing is really a Mayfly. When Old Man Lin returned to Jiazhou on the Mayfly, it was already past 9 in the morning in Jiazhou. An hour later, it was 10 in the morning. Xianyu Group and Jiazhou officials jointly issued an announcement after friendly consultation and equal exchanges. At 8 o'clock this morning, Jiazhou Nuclear Industry Group and Xianyu Group reached a cooperation on the design and construction of the first generation of commercial nuclear fusion reactor test reactor. The reactor construction site is currently selected as Jiazhou's Kaiyang Island, and construction will start soon. This is undoubtedly a great project. I hope this cooperation can be successfully implemented and succeed. The content of the announcement is very formal, and the two sides issued the same thing. A few plain lines of words seem to be announcing something that is not so eye-catching. However, the announcement issued by the two groups together is enough to explode and attract attention. The direct construction of a nuclear fusion test reactor, and the content is even more explosive. Soon this announcement spread all over the internet, attracting the attention of countless people. What are you doing? Is this still Blue Star? No. What big thing happened when I woke up? Nuclear fusion? No, buddy. Why do I feel like the world has suddenly evolved into something I can't understand? Is this true? I don't have much education. Don't lie to me. Jiazhou Nuclear Industry Group and Xianyu Group. No, it's Xianyu Energy Company under Xianyu Group. The cooperation between the two is a powerful alliance. Haha, you are just rehashing the old story again. Nuclear fusion has been promoted for many years, but there has been no breakthrough. Stop bragging. It's funny that the two are joining forces. In the field of nuclear energy, we still have to look at the bald eagle. What kind of powerful alliance is this? It is not recommended that the official cooperate with Xianyu Group. This company, from top to bottom, including the chairman Suyi, is full of executioners who kill without blinking an eye. They have committed horrific massacres in Hizhou. I don't believe that the official doesn't know. If you know and still want to cooperate with such a company, then it is undoubtedly collusion and contempt for human civilization. Bullshit. If Xianyu Group can really make nuclear fusion, he will map Hizhou inside and out several times, leaving no one alive. I have to praise his good map. That's right. You still recommend it. This is nuclear fusion. What's wrong with nuclear fusion? It's a lie. Only you idiots believe it. Then is the power armor a lie? Is the water of life a lie? Is the carbon-based crystal a lie? Xianyu Group may be an illusion to you. After all, it has made your bald eagle father so embarrassed. How can it be real? It's so funny, so annoying. I saw an article about the feasibility of nuclear fusion technology posted on the official website of Xianyu Group. Are there any good brothers who can go and take a look? Is it true or false? End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.